Right now on Full Custom Garage, master metalman Ian Roussel transforms a 1949 International work truck.
The other times I pulled this off, there were cars. This is Big Bertha. This is heavy duty.
As the build gets rolling, Ian's client takes him to a top-notch truck show.
After seeing the rigs at the truck show, I knew we had to take this all the way.
He's very, very ambitious, and nothing's frightening to him. It is a little frightening to me.
With the project on the line, Ian's got to get down and make it happen.
I don't think Bill really wanted to go full bore with this truck, but my kind of crazy is contagious. My friend Bill's got a new project he wants to start. I've worked with him a few times in the past, and all of his stuff has been unique. I really can't wait to see what he's got.
I have a roll-off truck I haul trash with for myself and for clients. I have several containers, boxes that I can leave at clients. They can fill them. I can then go do something else. The roll-off truck is super versatile. I can haul a tractor, whatever, on the flatbed. I can haul material if I'm building something for my property. So it's very, very versatile. I don't want to work full-time at it, but it's fun for me the time that I get to do it. I like it a lot.
Bill's into custom cars. He wants a custom rig. He wants to do something cool.
What I want with the roll-off truck is something that's modern, with all the modern conveniences that they have. The automatics, the air brakes, the power steering, all that, but looks old, the old cab. That's what I'm shooting for.
I've done a lot of body swaps. This is nothing new to me. The only thing is that it's bigger.
I've been thinking about this project since Ian did the panel truck that I have. It's a '63 Ford panel truck.
I pulled a couple ballsy moves, and I think he respected me for that. I cut the car in half lengthwise because the donor vehicle was wider than the Falcon.
He cut it right down the center, took that whole chassis down to nothing, and put the Falcon right on top of it. Basically widened the car 6 inches.
In the end, that's the trick. Nobody's got it, and that's why I did it that way.
I've been wanting to do this truck project for a bit, and I've been getting pieces here, pieces there, parts. Some are real rough, and some will be usable.
Bill wants to put together a modern roll-off truck with a 1940s cab. He said he's been collecting parts for a while, so I want to check out what he's got. He told me he had a chassis identical to this one with a good running motor in it, and he had a bunch of old trucks laying around also. He wants me to just come take a look at what he's got and make a decision to build him a cool truck. It's pretty clear that Bill's an optimist. I think that he thinks that I can do anything, and he's pretty close. But he had a few things that were too far gone. This thing's pretty rough. Everything's fixable to a point, but I don't think this is the one. He had one cab that was up here that it looked like a freaking asteroid hit it. I don't know what to say. It was completely wasted. You can see where all the panels come together. Water's been sitting in there and it's just rotted from the inside out. I nixed that. He showed me a few other things he had laying around. And I really think this 48 International, it's a KB8. I think this is a perfect candidate. This is the one we're using.
The KB8 International that I ended up with came from Montana, and a pretty straight cab for a 1948. It reminds me very much of my childhood on the chicken farm. The first one we had was a similar body style, and I remember it well. So I'm excited about it, and I think it's going to be cool.
Got a couple dents in the roof, but there's no cancer. Only a little surface rust. Looking around, he's got this KB8. I liked it because there was no rot. Take a little hammering to get the roof back into shape, but it looks good. I think this is the one. Doors operate smoothly. Dash is there. They've usually been picked clean, but this is really sweet. It's got all the knobs, gauges. It's like super old school. It's cool. It's Pretty crazy how a truck this big would have such a tiny little cab. I mean, to have two big guys in here, you know, going to work on the farm or whatever they're doing, not much room. It's all business in here. It's got the VIN number tags. It's legit. This is a good start. Seems like it's all here. There's pieces all over the place, but they all look good. Yeah, this is a really cool fender. I'm not familiar with the bigger International stuff in these early years. It's got some big, giant headlights, and it's in good shape. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. No real rust, just a little weathering. I guess this is the donor chassis. He says it's in good working condition. The plus on this is it's got a low mileage, really powerful, modern turbo diesel engine with an automatic transmission. It's just too big for my shop. We'll have to do it here. The fact that we have all the parts for this makes it a lot easier. Typically I have to try to find some stuff, but it's all here, so I'm ready to get down. Everything I have done so far has been show car stuff, street car stuff. Building a cool custom truck is pretty much the same process, but the fact of this is it's got to be strong. It's got to be functional, and that's the challenge. Before I get started, I just wanted to get a quick look at how the cab looks sitting on the chassis. It's great to see the cab fit on the chassis. I really like the look of the original cab, and I'm glad I didn't have to cut it up. The problem is, the 48 fenders are set up for a much narrower axle. I made some measurements. I'm gonna widen these fenders 3 inches on each side. I'm gonna weld them all together and then fit it up. I'm already committed to what I'm doing.
We had the body off and laid it here, and in a very, very short order, he was widening the fenders, and I'm going, wow, how involved are we really gonna get?
The whole deal with how this thing is being widened is really just like creating your own puzzle pieces. So I put the fenders where I wanted them and just put in this high-cut piece of sheet metal to just make it happen. It seems like a huge deal just to get these things set up, but that's only the beginning. This is all preliminary steps. All the work I've done so far has been on the outside of the sheet metal. There's a lot of interior stuff, namely the engine and intercooler, radiator. They're huge. Since the thing's all in one piece now, I have to trim back all the excess sheet metal that's hanging around on the inside. My biggest concern with this build is the sheer size of it. It's a big truck. It's like 8 feet wide. So I'm basically just gonna put it on there and we'll see how it looks.
When I first walked in on this cab, I had my little grandson Lincoln with me, and he oohed and awed about it, and Ian liked that, I think.
Might seem silly, but Bill's grandson is here, and having him to review my work really helps out. Everything I do, I like to have sort of a childlike quality, you know, like a big toy. He looks at it, and it's Tonka time. Straight up, let's play. I was stoked to get the cab and the nose up on the chassis. Everything looks like it's gonna work out. It fits good, it's gonna steer. I'm charged, I'm ready to go.
When I saw the cab on the chassis for the first time, I went, oh yeah, this guy nailed it.
This is an old GMC, looks like it's from the 40s. Whoa, look at this engine. That is what I'm talking about. We're at a truck show for the American Truck Historical Society. It's a pretty cool setup. We're working hard on Bill's truck. He's got some wild ideas for this project, so I came up here to one of their shows to check it out. It's pretty hard to know what to expect, so showing up here, you see that there's all different kinds of trucks, different years, makes, models, etc. For me, it's the variety that's really interesting. I love the older stuff, anything pre-1950, but you can't argue with the huge horsepower in the 1970s rigs.
I just like the variety of things that's here. There's everything from an old camper truck over there that the guy it's like a 50 Ford pickup that he's just cut up and done all kinds of stuff to. Then right next to it is like a 40s auto car that is a tow truck. So pretty impressive, the variety of things here, if you will.
33 Chevy pickup, and 33. You're all kinds of class in that thing. This is my pick. This is the one I'm taking home. I'm gonna get out my checkbook. This is my new shop truck. I don't know what the heck this thing is. I've seen one other like it, but it was a full body. I don't know if this has some relation. Apparently they were made for GM, like at some point, maybe a World's Fair or some kind of promotional effort. This thing is amazing. One of the things I've been wanting to see for a long time are these displays of the weird engines you see, steam engines, some kind of weird misfiring engines. They're more for utility. One guy's got them hooked up to washing machines. Some guy's charging batteries over there. There's a drill press. I would love to do a project with one of those. That would be fun.
I didn't need motivation to get excited about finishing my truck, but this definitely does it. If I could have it on the road next week, it would be great.
Checking out all this stuff, it's been really cool. Bill's ideas have merit. I'm stoked. I was a little concerned when he told me his first plan, but his truck's got a brand new chassis under it. It's got the look of these older rigs, and it's full custom. After checking out this show, it's obvious these guys take their stuff very seriously. I was thinking it might be some kind of hillbilly farm truck we were gonna make, but after seeing the level of detail on these rigs, we gotta push it all the way.
I think Ian was very inspired and liked it. The problem is, in my world, these are trailer queens. They put these trucks on big trailers and bring them. I'm going, what? I want a working truck.
So we get this cab set up on the chassis, and it looks bitchin'. I'm really happy with it. Bill's big concern is getting access to this engine. He really likes the idea of the old school trapdoor style hood. I think we should just go bigger. The whole plan here is the nose of the truck, the hood, the side panels, the fenders, the bumper, the lights, the kitchen sink. The whole deal slides forward and gets out of your way. You want to check the oil? There's nothing stopping you. I helped out on a build of a really cool truck, showed Bill a bunch of pictures of it, and I think we could use the same formula for this, just upsize everything. We need to get this so that it's a sliding mechanism. I'm thinking like trailer hitch stock. It's like, see how you got these two square telescopic tubes?
Oh.
If we just had some generic material.
You know, I have some tube down there on the pipe rack that I want you to take a look at that might work for that.
I think trailer hitch stock will be perfect. I thought I had all the parts for this build, but we didn't expect to make a tilt sliding nose. Bill's got a lot of stuff laying around here, so we're just gonna see if he's got what it takes. It looks like he's got a bunch of trailer hitch stock laying up here. So this should work for the slider. He's got more than enough. I want to make this nose slide forward and pivot. I think the trailer hitch stock will be the perfect thing to make this work. That's the stuff, man. So my idea for the sliding tilt nose I got this trailer hitch receiver stock, and he has the interior section for that. See, it's different than the standard stuff because it's got rounded edges. So it slides on there pretty nice. I thought I'd take the rust off, but that seems like it acts as sort of a bearing. So this will be incorporated to the truck frame, 2 of them parallel, and then I'll cut 2 sections of this off, and the whole nose will slide forward, and then there'll be pivots here. So it slides off of the front of the truck and then pivots up. It's a telescopic square steel tube. It's super strong. I have a feeling it's gonna work out perfect. All we need for this nose to tilt is a big ass hinge. Straight up, it could be any way we find it.
I have a box of hinges here of different applications of different things we've done.
The fact that these things need to be strong is critical. There's gonna be so much leverage. I can't even calculate how much leverage this nose is gonna put on the hinge pin. This style would work, because these have a very strong center pin. See, all these are just little stamped things, but something like this would be perfect. Like a weldable hinge. I have the idea that gate hinges are pretty cool because they have little Zerk fittings, you can grease them, there's a ball bearing in there, but if it comes down to it, a couple pieces of pipe will work too.
Something like that. These are these small ones again.
These will totally work. They got little Zerk fittings.
Yeah, those
yeah, these are totally perfect. They got a little ball bearing in there to help support it. I've done a bunch of tilt hoods on cars. I haven't used any hinges this strong, so all I could say is let's give it a try. What could possibly go wrong?
After Ian got all the parts together to do the tilt, I get it now. It came through and I understand what he's trying to do. He showed me another truck that he had tilted, but again, this is just a work truck, not a show truck.
My whole deal is proving it by the work. I'm just gonna bust this out, and I know he'll like it. I got the 2 trailer hitch receivers set up. I was able to use the original bumper brackets, which is a huge time saver. The good thing about mounting off the original bumper brackets is this whole unit will be adjustable if you needed to reposition it. Say it got hit or loosened up or something. So this is the part that will actually hold the bumper and the entire skin of the nose of the truck. The whole idea is kind of like a trailer hitch in your car or truck. There's like a receiver, and then there's a piece that inserts into it. You can see here how they'll pivot. What I have to do now is create a cross brace that doesn't attach anything except the hinges so that the whole nose and bumper will rotate around this assembly. I have to widen this bumper no matter what. Bill's got a cool old license plate he wants to use, and I got an idea on how to incorporate a special frame into the front bumper. I guess the challenge is to find a piece that is strong enough to support the weight of the whole nose of the truck. The bumper's 8 inches from top to bottom, so if there was like a C channel, 8 inches, we could kind of French the license plate and be super strong. You got 6-inch channel, which would fit, but, well, that won't even fit. Huh. I'd say that looks like a license plate frame. I'll just cut the rear legs off of this I-beam, and then we have a surround. That's plenty strong. Some kind of piece of an old tractor. Recycle. The whole thing about using this big chunk of steel, for me, is the strength. This is the center of the entire mounting point of the nose. I know that I can make this thing work. The main feature is that it needs to be strong. The license plate happens to fit, and I think it's gonna work. One of the main things I do in building cars is reuse stuff. It's a challenge for me. I am frugal. If I don't have to buy material, I'm all about it. It's definitely the strongest license plate frame I'll probably ever make. The whole concept with reusing material is that it gives you something you couldn't have thought of in advance. That's my trip, man. That's what I like to do. Find something and make it work. This is gonna be a recessed shape for the license plate to hang out in. The bumper is convex, it's curved on the front. The lip is about the same as this, about 2 inches, but then it curls forward. So I just left a lot of extra material out here so I can just put each side of the bumper welded in here and it'll be real strong. This grill's a little bent, so it's a little deceptive, but the whole framework is squared up with the body, so. I guess I'm gonna just cut the bumper right in half and just kind of fit it and see what it looks like. I want these guys to be an even left and a right, so I'm actually gonna just bolt them together through the holes, and I'll make a scribe across so that the left and the right sides are equal. I'm just gonna tack this on. I'm gonna use this line as the top edge and make it parallel with that. Just like backwards, sort of. That's the straightest crooked bumper I've ever seen. I'll take it. Doesn't have to be perfect, just better be real good. It's a pretty cool idea because there was never a bumper this wide. None of those trucks had a French license plate. Nobody's got it like this. The whole thing is it's super subtle. It's like I'm all grown up.
Today I brought the license plate down and he had, as he calls it, Frenched it into the bumper and fit perfect, looks perfect, is perfect. So some of my apprehension is going away. Yeah, I like your license plate.
Yeah, it worked out pretty good.
Custom license plate.
So the, you know, the bumper's still kind of banged up, but you could body work it.
We'll clean it up a little bit, yeah. No, I think it looks great, man. A lot of work,
Yeah. I don't think Bill really wanted to go full bore with this truck, but my kind of crazy is contagious. After Bill saw that tilt bumper, he was all about it. All right, this is more like it. Usually I'm laying on the ground underneath stuff. I feel a little more in my element. So all I'm gonna do here is we still have the hinge that's just floating. The big structure in the center is something I'm gonna tie into. Just gonna find some kind of a bar. Maybe I'll use the 2-inch stock we have, and I'll just weld it on, cut those braces away, and it should pivot. It's a pretty badass saw. This 2-inch tube is attaching on the far end to that big center section that I made, which is super strong. And it's gonna come across, hit the tab on this hinge, and also hit the bumper itself. So it'll be like a 3-point bracket hidden inside. Puts a little more strength in the whole assembly because even though you can't see it because everything's squared, there's a lot of triangulation in here. Helps with moving forward and backwards and up and down. All right, so the last part of this is getting the sheet metal attached to the pivoting bumper. The truck was a little bit off level. I'm not sure what's going on there. So that could be in the suspension. All I did was put a floor jack under the axle, and I got the whole bumper and the chassis leveled perfectly. Fortunately, there was this car lift here, so I just attached a piece of that to the cross bracing and kind of strapped it off to the motorhome over there and just got everything squared up. A little pushing and pulling, but now that it's in shape, centered, and level, I'm gonna just build a frame at a 2-inch square, same stuff we've been using. I'm gonna make an arch that goes up underneath each side of the fender, and then just build some kind of gusseting around that just to grab all the sheet metal so it doesn't get out of shape when it lifts. So you got this old bracing in here. My idea is to come back right near the slider there and then arch up around, grabbing that original brace and also having something up here in the top of the center of the fender. This truck was not set up for anything like this. The engineers never imagined this for this vehicle. So I'm just building like a whole new front of the frame, basically. It's a bunch of jigging up and making sure everything's square, and then attaching it to the chassis so that it's strong and in line. So the whole idea is, as this bumper's pivoting, this will pivot as well, but it'll offer support to the sheet metal. So I'm gonna do that on both sides, and then I'll follow up with those arch shapes. I've seen Bill come peeking around. You know, I've been hard at work. I think he's a little skeptical, but that only fuels the fire. That's making me want to make this happen. Yeah, the idea with using these curved pieces is by putting them through that machine, it makes them incredibly rigid. It puts a lot of stress in it. So these, along with a few other gussets, will be the support of all the sheet metal inside. The way that this curve comes in is going to be perfect. You see it intersects the original bracket in the fender. I can just trim that back, weld it up, and I'll make a miter joint down at the bottom here. It'll work out good. Once I built this subframe with the sliders and all the armature to hold it, it was freaking heavy. It's gotta be incredibly strong. It's gonna have a huge amount of weight. The other times I pulled this off, there were cars. You could just grab it by hand and slide it. This is Big Bertha. It's heavy duty. Once I got the under structure in place, I had to move on to the gravel pan. It was the last thing I needed to do to see if my idea was gonna work. The original truck has like this splash pan, gravel pan, whatever you want to call it. It's like a trim sheet metal that goes between the bumper and the fenders. All right, so I'm gonna try to splice these pans in. The dimensions from the fender to the bumper are a little bit different. And there's no real reason to use these except that I like the little design. It makes it look a little more old-fashioned. The frame spot doesn't really match up as it did in the other one. I'm probably just gonna cut them in half and piece together what I can. It would have been 10 times easier to just take a piece of steel and fill in the area where the gravel pan is. It's little things like this gravel pan modification that are my signature. See, this got split in half before it was all taken apart, so this guy will just weld right up to the grill like that. I'll lap it onto the bumper, seam it in, cut it right through there, move it over. This little bump doesn't line up with the frame, so I'll probably just make a new shape to cover the frame that'll sort of represent what was there. Right, so we're gonna cut her up, weld her in, get her done. Trying to use the original stuff because it's got these cool embossed ridges in it, and that's really gonna sell it. When somebody looks at it, it looks old, factory stock, but it's mutated, and that's really cool. There's a lot of work in getting this to fit, but it's worth it in the end, I know it. Something's happened with that fender in the past where it's all out of shape. So what I'm gonna do is just space these guys into the bumper so that they're the same distance. These bolt holes are a pretty good guide. I was able to pretty much just grab the fender and yank it, and it's about 1/4 inch off. So I'm just gonna put a little pull on it. I'll put a temporary brace, weld the pan in, and it matches. Got the majority of the pans put in. You can see I still got to fab up these center pieces from where they split and got wider. But before I go any further, I just want to verify that this is all going to work. As soon as I got the majority of the gravel pan fabbed in, I just needed to see this thing tilt. This is the end of the mock-up. This is the moment of truth. Par for the course. All of this work, I finally get the thing ready to tilt, and it's stuck. Bill's standing right there. It's just perfect.
It wouldn't move. It wouldn't move. And I went back to the, damn, it's so heavy, we can't do it. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, now what?
When you got 5 million welds, your percentage of some attaching themselves to the cab is increased, so in the end, that's what happened. The thing would not hinge open because it was welded shut. Like that. And it'll pivot up. Like that. There it is. You got a tilt nose.
It is just awesome. Really cool. Everything I hoped it would be.
Going for the KO, but I hung in there. I was bobbing, I was weaving, I was ducking. Pulled it off.
A lot of blood, sweat, and tears by that young man right there.
Once I got the hood tilt understructure and gravel pan in, I went on to the hydraulics. It's a pretty trick. Just this one piston on one side slides the whole thing forward and then tilts it up. It's super simple hand-operated pump. They put this little pump back here behind the cab and it works just like a floor jack. It's slick. The great thing about this design is it doesn't rely on the truck engine to operate. It's totally manual. The truck breaks down, you can still open the hood. We talked about maybe motorizing this, but if the truck breaks down, you got no power, how do you open it? So he came up with this hand pump. It's pretty cool. And that's it stays open. It's pretty wild. Once we got this hydraulic pump in place, it operates smoothly. It works great. It took a little doing, but Bill's convinced. It works and it looks bitchin'. I'm just gonna disassemble the whole cab and take it off of the chassis. It's ready for bodywork, so I guess I'll just unbolt everything and catch up once it's in the bodywork. I wasn't looking forward to bodywork or paint on this, but just seeing Bill so excited, I knew it had to get done.
This went further than I expected, and I had to sell the white truck that is my one and only roll-off truck to fund this. So now we're kind of at an urgency to finish it.
Trying to get this thing as clean as possible. We really bondoed out almost the whole body. The roof was in horrible condition. And then we went in and sanded everything inside and out, wire wheeled it. So I'm just gonna wipe off the last bit of the dust and primer it. I'll just primer this, then we'll set it back on the chassis and just make sure everything fits before we paint it. That way nothing chips when we assemble it. The whole idea with test fitting the body is to make sure that the procedure works, namely getting the thing up in the air with the forklift without screwing it up. And we wanted to check that the intercooler wasn't in the way of the nose when it's shut on the body, and all the gaps were good. Once it's painted, you really can't modify anything, so it's important to test fit everything. Cool, we'll check out this intercooler. Let's see if it works. Because the nose of that truck cab is so much narrower than the later model donor we're using, I had to cut the tanks because the grill is very narrow. So I cut them, plated them, and then we ran into another problem where this corner was too wide still. So I cut a little diamond shape out of each side. Hopefully it fits. That's the really cool thing, is it sits in the little saddle like somebody from the factory made it. All right, Captain, lower the drawbridge. Say, that's a nice truck you've got there. Is any little adjustments we have to do once it's painted, it's no sweat. You know, we'll be away from the paint. That's all I was worried about. With such an intense project like this, it really helps when the original mechanical parts remain intact. With the intercooler, the steering, everything else mechanical, it really helps out in the end when it's all stock. We're just gonna do a few more coats of primer, sand, then paint it. After that, it's assemble and drive. I find it easier to just put like a whole bunch of stuff all over the table, and it's kind of like a cooking show, you know? I don't really know what I'm doing, just as long as it's green. I'm gonna spray it. Put a little of that, shake of that, stir in some of that over medium heat, and bake for 30 minutes. I think what I'm gonna do is just put a big heavy coat, first wet base coat on the roof, and then I'll move over to the doors after I get the first coat on the cab. Got this thing painted, assembled. This truck is clean. I mean, it's really badass. I wish I could drive it. The cool factor is that it's super subtle. The few people who've seen it are just blown away. Just because it looks like a stock truck. I mean, it's hard to tell. And you do the special hood and you show them what's going on. And it's cool. I can't wait to take this thing to a show. The thing I like most about it is the front view. Obviously, we know the fenders are widened, but you don't think that when you look at it. You just think, what a freaking big truck.
There's not one thing I would change on this truck. I love everything about it. A lot of that is due to Ian and his persistence and his fabrication.
My job was all the heavy fabrication and assembly, and then Bill got down on all the accessories and finishing parts. He polished out all the stainless steel, got some bitchin' aluminum rims, got the special mirrors, the chrome horns, the air cleaner. I mean, he knows what a truck needs to be legal on the road, so he fitted out with everything DOT approved and all the trick, cool looking stuff too.
Oh, the best thing is, of course, the tilt front end that I was very apprehensive about. You know, it's just awesome. I mean, I've showed it to people and they go, really? How does that work? Well, works like this, and you just pump this hydraulic jack and it tilts and goes out. But people that are not even car or truck people are very like, wow, it's just something way different. And that, of course, is the best part. And that it still has the old look. When it's rolling down the road, you can't tell the front tilts like that. But when you stop and you tilt it, cool.
The cool factor, it's like, it's a real question mark. That's the whole thing. It's people look at it, and guys who know trucks are like, there was no roll-off trucks in 1948.
I think Ian, as time has gone along, and I've done the little things that I've done to it, he now gets that it's going to be a working truck. I don't think he really got that before because he's never built anything like this. It's mostly show cars and toys. It's a show truck and it's a toy, but it's a working all of that. It's a multi-functioning truck. It'll function as a flatbed truck, a dump truck, a van, does everything. And that is the beauty of that truck. Yeah, I just use it mainly as a toy. If my wife were here, she'd say it's an expensive toy. which that's okay. It pays for itself, and I have fun, and that's what life is. But the truck itself worked perfectly. I'm very happy. I'm very happy with it. Turned out great.
In the end, I mean, Bill is stoked. He's super happy about it, and I'm jealous. That means it's a good project.
Right now on Full Custom Garage, Master Metalman Ian Roussel brings his wild vision to the world of Volkswagen bugs.
I built a couple radical bugs, and looking around, I'm seeing stock ones, nothing crazy. It makes me want to chop one up and build something really wild.
With his hands on a stock bug and a head full of ideas, it's on.
I have a couple ideas I'm not 100% sure of. It's kind of uncharted territory. I'm just going for it. I'm gonna cut the whole car into pieces. You gotta be a little reckless if you want to get the best stuff.
And later, when Ian shifts gears into a different project, the pressure's on.
These clients are buying the car sight unseen. I know that I've done my best work. I can only hope that they appreciate it. I really like Volkswagens. It was one of those things growing up in New York, you just didn't see them. So for me, they became a very special car. They had total character, especially Baja bugs or custom VWs. You just never saw them on the East Coast. So really, that's what became so appealing. They were rare. I've been working on this bug for about 18 months. It all started with this little toy somebody gave me. I've always been into VWs, so I saw this thing and I'm like, hey, I could build this. I could make a full-size one. I was really just kind of showing off in building this whole thing. This was just like an experiment. It's got custom everything. The chassis got a lot of tubular structure in it. It's chopped radically. It's really changed around from a stock car. I wasn't really pushing on finishing this car. I'm always working on a lot of projects, so this car is sitting in the side of the shop most of the time. The front suspension just needs to be finished, and it's a runner. And I'm really just kind of lagging. I'm looking for some inspiration to get it done. I haven't been involved in the VW world. I haven't even been to a car show or read magazines in forever. So I think I want to go out and just kind of see what's happening in the scene. We're at the VW Classic in Irvine, California, one of the largest VW shows in the world. Just looking to see what's new and hot. I haven't been to many Volkswagen shows in the past few years. You know, VW Bug is my first car. It's what I drove all through high school. Having not been to a show in a number of years, it's good to see the scene is still happening. I'm here looking at the swap meet for some parts for the build and definitely for some inspiration. This is an all VW show, so there's only VW parts at the swap meet. I specifically was looking for some cool rims, maybe some wheel adapters, and some headlights. Well, the most important thing in any swap meet is the footwork. Nobody's advertising what they have, so you just gotta search it out. Things I'm looking for are typically in cardboard boxes or milk crates. They're not very showy, but you gotta find it. For me, this is shopping. I like stuff in cardboard boxes. I'm looking for shapes. Anything that's cool, you know, I have a mental registry and I'm flipping through it. If I see anything that looks like it'll fit, it's coming home. It's almost what we need. I was surprised how conservative the scene seems to have gotten. There was a lot of resto customs, basically like a restored car that's modified. And I guess that really just shows that these cars are becoming increasingly valuable. People aren't hacking them up the way I had seen in the 80s and early 90s. Every car that I'm building is kind of an artistic statement, and what I'm seeing here is really a big nod of respect to the factory engineers. Nobody's cutting these things up as crazy as I have been accustomed to seeing. Everybody agrees, most times it's the rim and tire combination that can make the car. The white and blue, it totally works. The body on this car is pretty stock, but obviously they went to town on the suspension. Looks like it's got a narrowed front beam, and I kind of like how it's all cambered out in the back end. It just looks like somebody squished it. This is a typical thing you see with VWs with a swing axle. When you lower them, the tires literally swing around the center arc, so you know that this is pretty much a stock floor pan. That's why the rear tires are so bent out of shape, but it looks cool. It's not good for the tire wear, but I kind of like it. It's good to see a number of different year cars that were chopped. You could see the challenges that you face when you cut the roof on a car. So when you chop the top, this panel changes, and you can see the shape of the rear window changes pretty drastically. This kind of has to do with the B-pillar too. So it's just one of the things you got to think about when you're making the cuts. Even though VWs are getting harder and harder to find for restoration or a custom, by looking at today's attendance, you know the scene is happening. Seeing all these cars like this, you really get a sense of the cookie cutter catalog cars. Everything's identifiable. That makes me want to make something even crazier. Because what stands out? The one you can't figure out, right? That's where I come in. It's kind of funny. I went to this VW show to get inspiration to finish up the car I'm working on, but it got me charged up to go in a whole new direction. I really think I can pull off a really awesome chop top. I know Bill's got a car, so here we go, another project. Bill's a client of mine. We've worked together on a bunch of projects. He's got more stuff than I can ever imagine. I put labor into his projects for his treasures, so we do a lot of horse trading. Bill and I were talking about this VW bug project I had. He mentions, coincidentally, he's got one laying back here. Somebody changed the doors for some reason. It's pretty solid too, look at the rocker panels. Southwest car. There's no floor pan, no kind of VIN tag of any type, so I really don't know what year this is. He said he thought it was a 64 or 65. It's in really good shape. This is a perfect start. Somebody stripped everything out of it. I don't have any carpet to remove. It's off of its floor pan. I have another floor pan at the shop I can put this on just to make sure everything is square. All the door gaps look good. I don't think the car was crashed. It's never been rolled over. He said it was a Baja bug, so I don't think it was jumped too hard or really freaked out on. This is freaking perfect. There's no preparation. I thought usually you get a car, you gotta pull all the dead rats and bubblegum wrappers out of it. This thing is just clean metal. It's ready to go. I don't know how heavy these things are. There she is. Hi-ya. Get this thing harnessed up, get her back to the shop. All right, let's get the heck out of here. I have a couple ideas I'm not 100% sure of. It's kind of uncharted territory. I'm just going for it. I'm gonna cut the whole car into pieces. It really helps me out to see a car on a chassis with rolling gear. That's the whole reason I pulled this stock VW pan in, just to get a look, a starting point. I think this is how they did it in the factory. Back in Germany, I think this is how they assembled them. My whole thing is I'm working with existing parts, so I need all the stuff that fit around the body to make it convincing. I don't want to sketch it, I want a three-dimensional view of it. hard part about building this way is you're just stacking a lot of parts. I'm moving car bodies, tires, frames. It's a lot of work. Putting it on the floor pan, you see it. It looks like a typical bug. Everybody's got one. It makes me want to cut it up, change it around. This is a good reference to see there's no weight in the car. The VW is a great off-road vehicle, so you can see that this, as a Baja bug, it had tons of ground clearance, plenty of headroom, big windows, you could see all the obstacles you're approaching. That's not what I want. It's a pretty tall car. I want it about that high. This new bug, I'm really just trying to one-up a couple things in the chop I just did. Namely the windshield height and just the general appearance of it. There's a couple subtle changes, but I know I can move through this thing fast, and that's the whole plan. Just if I can reproduce this, maybe people will buy them. Maybe I can get better and better at it and sell them. I'm making this bug different than the blue one for a reason. When you look at that car, it's really wedged down in the front. That's what I was going for. This one's gonna have a mellower, straight down look. I want this car to be really fast. I want it to be just wild, just totally custom, my own build. This car will look like a Volkswagen that's been modified, but underneath the outer skin, it'll be completely my own work. My plan for this is to cut it apart, piece it back together on the floor, and see how it looks. I took off the doors just to lighten the whole thing up. I'm cutting the roof off. The C-pillar's a pretty big deal, so I just want to get everything out of the way. Once I got the doors off, I had to figure out how I was going to go about cutting the rear of the C-pillars out. There's a million ways to cut a car. The VW in the rear, in the C-pillar, is kind of a unique shape, so I'm choosing to just delete it. It's going to be easier to build it back than to try to modify it. I needed to cut out the whole rear package tray. The reason is the body's narrower, so it's just fast for me to get it out of the way and build a new one. The whole trick with this is I'm leading the whole chop off of the A-pillars. Everything else is built to fit. So as long as the body's square and the A-pillars fit, carry on. It appeared I didn't mark the side of the car before I cut it, because I didn't. I'm that good. I know these cars. I just freaking go. That's why it's so quick. There's two ways to chop a top. You can either widen the roof to fit the body, or you can narrow the body to fit the roof. And I found that narrowing the body is a lot easier. You gotta be a little reckless if you want to get the best stuff. By cutting a car up and piecing and placing stuff, by mocking up pieces instead of like having a set definition of where you're going, it allows room for that little nuance, that thing that could potentially take it over the edge. And I just love the feeling of being a little reckless. I'm confident enough to be able to pull it off. Now that I got the roof off, I'm just gonna get this chassis out of here. I wanna lay it out on the floor so I can really see how it looks. What I'm doing here is just mocking up the pieces of the body. The reason I cut this car right in half was because as the top comes down, this is a triangle, so it's gonna fall through these upright posts. What I'm gonna do is cut right through the center of the body. Well, you know what? I'm gonna cut 4 inches out of the windshield right now, and then we'll stick it on there and see. Chopping a top takes a lot of measuring, and I just try to make it easy as possible. 3M gave us a whole bunch of tape, so I just used a 3/4 inch tape, marked it out, and cut it straight ahead. It's just easier for me to lay out tape. A lot of people do that, so you got 3/4 times 3, that's 2 1/4 inch. My aim here is to minimize the amount of finish work. I'm only chopping through the pillars so that there's less body work and finish time. If I was to cut the whole roof skin, it's a ton of hammer welding, Bondo, sanding, etc. By keeping these areas that I'm cutting pretty small, it's going to be a lot easier to finish up. So what I've been describing is as the roof comes down in height, these dimensions between the window openings get further and further from where they were. You can see on the inside here is 39 3/4. But now, where they come together, this inside is 41. So the lower the roof gets, the more mismatched they are. Most people will split the roof and make it wider to take care of that. But I like the idea of making the car smaller. Narrowing the body is really fast because you don't have to cut through that big dome in the roof. That's a huge welding procedure. Narrowing the body makes it fast. That's bottom line. My plan for this car right now is to have a front engine, so eventually all of this, or the majority of it, will be gone. But just so I can get a good look, I'm gonna trim it nice, put it together, and chop the hell out of it later. Ultimately, I will measure out and line all this up, but right now I'm just tacking it. These proportions might change. Those cuts are pretty darn close to almost like a professional did it. I'm gonna tack this up pretty strong because these are gonna be the lead off on the rest of the chop. It's a 4-inch chop in the windshield pillars. Yeah, I think that's perfect. This rear window is obviously way too low. Something I was really stuck on was how this rear window was gonna fit. When I chopped it, it was too low, it was too big, it was all wrong in the back. I'm gonna cut out this window frame completely. I'm gonna move the top up 5 or 6 inches, and then I'm gonna bring the bottom up. So I'll chop the rear window, whatever looks right also. My opinion is the smaller the glass, the better. What that does is gives you more paint area. It looks like a larger sheet metal shape. And that's trick. See, it just brought the whole window frame up. And now if you look around the car, the windows are all at pretty much the same height. And in the end, I'm gonna figure out how much smaller the back window gets. Trucking along on this body, got a lot of bracing and stuff. The plan for me right now is to weld in the top of the window. I definitely like the line. If you look here, how this line comes through, visually, that flows around pretty cool. I like that. Taking a lot of time just to step back and look at it. It's all about the visual impact that it has. The window openings are very important to me. I think I'm just gonna cut these 2 little tail pieces off and stick a tire under there and look at it. I have a lot of experience with moving Volkswagen bodies. So this is pretty much how I build everything. You know, you can draw stuff, but I really find it easier to just stack parts. That looks freaking bitchin'. Now that I got the body together, I want to put the doors on and fit out the window surrounds. I'm really stoked to see this thing mocked up. Some doors on, see if that doesn't change the look. Okay, looks great. Now that I got the doors on, it's time to just fit out the rest of the sheet metal. It's all about detail. I'm gonna spot this in right now. I just trimmed off 4 inches from this upright to match the roof, and it's pretty close. All right, that's tacked temporarily. You can see how much work's gonna have to go into that later, but hey, looks good from this side. I'll weld all around the seams, then there'll be 2 little spot welds that hold the old sheet metal. I'll dent it in a little bit, slick it with Bondini, call her done. This is what makes the chop. It seems like a little detail, but the fit and finish is what really makes it count. Got the door top on, it's a ton of time, it's very close. All the outside is done. It looks great. I'm very happy with it. The whole deal with making this chop a little bit better than the other ones is making the windshield smaller. The early Beetles had a really cool front shape on the roof, and as the years progressed, the windshield got bigger and bigger. So me making a small windshield just makes it look older, which I consider cooler. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna lap that right on the inside of that. Call her good. That's the plan, man. The reason I'm able to pull off these projects to completion is because I got my act together. Even though I wing it with these projects, it's not like I'm freaking loose 3 sheets to the wind, you know, just flying through it. This is all a disciplinary thing. You know, just because I act like I'm going into this all fun and frolic, it's all because I'm comfortable with it. So I'm just gonna sheet this really easy. I'll do a couple pie cuts here to bring that in, but that's later. Today's mission is just get that back window to this point. The whole thing about a chop, for me, is getting the proportions right. So I knew what I wanted in the windshield, but coming around the back, it's just fit it up, figure it out. Every time I start a car, I'm just falling in love. I don't think about how much work it's gonna be. I know how much work it's gonna be, but I can't think about that. You just gotta go for it. That's 5 inches out of the rear winder. So the idea here is that this line is gonna roll right through. Nice. Come out under this. Now the car looks like a chop top. That is perfect. So I got this Baja Bug hood from my good friend Don. He's got tons of stuff laying around. He had this fiberglass hood I decided to use this fiberglass hood because it's a little shorter. Looking at the Blue Bug, the hood is really close to the ground. The fiberglass hood that I'm using is quite a bit shorter. It's from a Baja Bug, and I think it's just gonna look cool. The car's 2 inches narrower than it was, so the fiberglass hood's gonna have to get narrowed too. I'm just gonna cut a big V groove out of it and piece it back together. The pie cut, close her up, give her a clamp. All you fiberglass savvy guys, you can sit back, enjoy a cold beverage, and watch the clown go to work. While I was waiting for the fiberglass to dry, I just finished up the driver's side rear window and the B-pillar. The primary difference between the way I work and someone who thinks out the whole thing beforehand is that I leave an opening for that nuance, you know? That's the great artist. That's the thing that makes the difference, is the unexpected. And I leave a lot of room for the unexpected. I totally get that my approach to this is not the standard procedure, but I've made it my whole career to be creative, and that's really what this is about. I don't want to have a job. I don't want to conform. I want to be creative. That's what I'm doing. That looks pretty good. Still gonna get a bunch more Bondo, hammer, dolly work, etc. But this is the metal fab. This is all the grinding and welding for the chop. The only way to explain if a chop looks good or not is to just look at it. It's really an individual take on it, you know? It depends what you're trying to do with the statement of the car. So I guess the worst case scenario is the windows are ill-fitting. You know, the lines look kinked, they're not smooth, and that's really what I'm trying to work past, just make it look factory. What you're witnessing here is the transformation of a VW Beetle into an awesome freaking hot rod. Now that it's laid out on the floor, this car is bitchin'. I think it's a keeper. There's always so many projects going on. I got this bug that I'm currently chopping, and it turns out there's a buyer for the Blue Bug. It's pretty crazy. I found a buyer randomly through word of mouth. This couple up in Canada heard that I built this car, and they want to buy it sight unseen. That's cool, but there's a bunch of stuff I gotta button up. To get this car rolling, I just gotta do a couple things to the front suspension and some minor interior work. Just trim it out and this car's done. The Blue Bug's been in storage for a while. I got it in another shop. I only got a couple days to make this happen, so I gotta get to it. Found this cool Ford axle. It must be a British Ford, I'm not sure. It's very narrow and super lightweight. I was thinking about how to improve it and kind of make it unique. Typically, the axle is a solid axle. These two centers are just joined. My idea with it was to split it, sort of like you see the later model Ford trucks, the independent I-beams. So I cut the axle in half. I took these bushings from leaf spring and just welded them in. So now the axle is sprung independently. Getting this front suspension dialed in isn't a lot of work, but it's technical. The handling of the car, the safety of the car, depends on this front axle behaving correctly. All the proportions of the car are different. It's 2 inches narrower than it was. So I thought maybe this little axle would fit the narrower car, but even still, when I set it up in mock-up, it just looked like it needed to be wider. So I split it in half. I built this bracket. You can see it's about, 8 inches wider than it used to be. And now it looks like it belongs that way. I'm gonna use air shocks on this car to suspend it. Being that it's such a lightweight vehicle, I can get away with it. Most of the times you'll see a leaf spring with this setup, but I think air shocks are gonna be fine. So the air shocks just bolt in like this, kind of at a diagonal angle. But I'm not gonna hook them up to test this out because it's just gonna restrict the movement. But you can see how they just fit in. It's pretty crazy that this axle bolts right to the VW wheels. I don't know. Maybe Maybe somebody out there knows what's up. I'll tell you, it works. I guess if you look at it from this angle, you can really see how drastically cambered the tire is. And that's not gonna work for me. If this thing should like get loose, unweight, tires are gonna tuck under and the car's gonna flip over, guaranteed. Problem with an off-camber suspension is if the car unweights, the tire tucks under and the car flips over. VWs are notorious for this. I'm making it worse because the front is doing the same as the rear. Typically a VW Bug, if it flips over because of this situation, it's because of the swing axle rear end. This car has sort of a swing axle front end as well. So it's got to be kept under control or this thing's going to be loose. So this is the air shock that is basically limiting the up and down suspension travel right now. It's all on the shock. There's nothing else on the car to stop it from moving. The whole thing to make this suspension work is bump stops and limiting straps. That keeps the axle in position. What the off-road trucks do is they use a limiting strap. It's kind of like seatbelt material. It's doubled up, stitched really strong. So as this guy is trying to open as the tire falls out, this guy limits the travel of the arm. The limiting straps were easy, simple bolt-on, but the up travel of the axle has to be controlled too. So the limiting straps, they only took care of half of the issue. They're stopping the tire from dropping out. But still, it can come up. So if you were to hit a big bump at speed, it would slam the shock shut and ultimately ruin it. You could do it a couple times, but we need to have some kind of a limiter to stop the axle from moving up. So for the up travel, I just ordered these bump stops from a catalog. Contrary to popular belief, I do order stuff from catalogs from time to time. The whole deal with ordering these bump stops is they're new, they're good, I need them. Simple rubber block with a bolt in it. They're meant to take the axle bouncing around like crazy on an off-road car. Every fabrication has its look. This car has a lot of tube elements in the whole front end. So for me, getting these bump stops mounted, it's gotta be a piece of tube and it's gotta look like it belongs in the car. When you're fitting something into an existing structure, there's always some kind of loose ends to button up. This piece has to be really strong. The entire weight of the front of the car is transferred through one bump stop when it hits something. I ended up making all these gusset shapes to just be strong and also look good. I didn't want a bunch of loose fitting pieces. So really, I just wanted to make the thing look right and be strong. I think that did it. All mechanical parts wear, things change. I made all this stuff adjustable, so as the car ages, you can adjust everything so it keeps the tires in the right position. Yeah, so that's cool because they could be put into here at that height or locked all the way up, so it'll give you an adjustable bump stop. Pretty slick. It works. That's what I'm saying, just driving down the street, you don't need more than that. It's great. The attitude of a car, the car's face, are defined by its headlights. These headlights are pretty crazy. They're actually pieces of spun aluminum that I found in the scrapyard. So I really made this whole unit. I had some glass lenses and I made everything else. They're seal beam bulbs that I glued in behind these antique lenses. So they're 12-volt high-low beams. They look like vintage car parts, but they're handmade. Really badass. The other cool feature is the way they mount on the car. So it's a round tube. So they're adjustable up and down. You can move them in and out because you'll see when you steer, it's very close. Like so. And when the hood shuts, these strange little shapes clear the hood. When you look at it, it looks like a face. So I wanted them to be in the right position, wanted them to be the right size, and I really just tailored the whole mounting bracket so that it was clean and invisible. When you look at it, it looks like there's just two bug eyes looking at you. I made suicide doors on the car. You can buy a kit. I didn't want to do that. I was really just doing this for me. So to show off, I made some really cool suicide door hinges. So all this is developing too. I made my own hinge setup. This is the same stock as the headlights are made of, just I think 3/4, 7/8 solid round. Had a couple gate hinges, heavy duty with grease fittings. I made a bracket, welded up inside the V-pillar here. I went suicide doors because I built a really radical VW once and I didn't do suicide doors. The first question out, why didn't you do suicide doors? So I figured, now nobody's got anything to say. What didn't I do? I haven't even driven this car. The measure of a car is how it drives, right? So I've really only started the engine up. I gotta take this thing out and spin it around and see how it behaves. Car is a blast. The crazy thing about this car is it is like a go-kart. I mean, it's miniature inside. It's really sectioned down, but it's a ton of fun to drive. It handles awesome, and the 50 horsepower that it has really makes it appear to be a strong runner. It's a ton of fun. It's like a big kid's go-kart. I got this car in just under the wire. The clients are on their way down. They're road tripping all the way from Canada to pick this thing up. And I really haven't even had time to enjoy it. I get to drive it around the parking lot a couple times, and then it's in the trailer and off to Canada. I've been working on this car for about 18 months, and it's pretty cool to see somebody just say, I want your work, we'll take it. These clients are buying the car sight unseen. I got a deposit wired into my bank account, and all they've seen is pictures and video of the car. So I'm a little nervous when they show up. I really don't know what they're expecting. I know that I've done my best work. I can only hope that they appreciate it. The most flattering thing really is that they know of me. They know the cars I've built, and they really wanted a piece of my work. That's the ultimate compliment. Hello.
Hello, Vivian.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you,
Right on.
Vivian.
So here's that thing.
That's sick. Wow. That's crazy. Just crazy, man. My name is Mark Hayward. I'm from a little town outside of Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Thought we'd come all the way down to California and meet Ian and pick up that beautiful little gem we got sitting over there. Oh, man.
But I fit. You're about 6'2", right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is gonna be all right, man. So this car here, I mean, I basically bought it sight unseen. It was just spur of the moment type of thing. Like I say, we corresponded on email, and he said, well, maybe you're interested in this Volkswagen I got. And he sent me a picture, and it was pretty much a done deal. I mean, how could you not? Just taking one look at that thing. It's phenomenal.
Very excited about having the car in our collection. And now we can take it back up to where we live, and I know it's going to be a showstopper wherever we take it. And that's something that we enjoy. We enjoy going to the car shows and having a one-of-a-kind car.
But the cool thing is when you're at the car show and you want to show off, you won't show everybody where the secret switch is, but you know, there's a secret switch under there, and then you just pop the doors like that to get in and out.
Oh yeah, this is gonna just, blow some people away.
I'm a little bummed I didn't get to enjoy the car, but the customers, they seem like they love it. They're really stoked on the paint color and the overall attitude of the car. It's a win-win situation for me because I've already got my mind set on the new car I'm building, and they're happy with what they got.
Oh yeah, I got something for you. I brought you something.
Okay, I heard that there was a little treasure in the trailer.
I got a little treasure in the trailer, all the way down from the frozen north.
Whoa, what the heck is that thing?
That's a 51 Henry J.
Holy moly.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen one. It's pretty crazy. Mark brought down this Henry J. It's a bitchin' car. It looks like they're doing like a pro street thing. This car was sitting around Mark's garage for years. He's in no real rush to finish it, but he wants me to build it. That is a great compliment. That's crazy, and it has no trunk. What kind of car doesn't have a trunk?
We have lots of projects, both Viv and I, and I'll never get to them all, so it's like, okay, let's give one to Ian and see what he comes up with. And if it's anything like that Volkswagen over there, we're gonna get a pretty nice hot rod out of this. Seeing his work, you know, through the video, seeing the car now in person, yeah, I mean, I trust him 100%. I think it's just his creativity, and it gets down to his hands, and that's what he can fabricate and do. So, yeah, I have full faith in him to turn that project we just left him here into something. He's just a guy that can take nothing and build it into something. That is phenomenal in my book.
Pulling this car up next to a stock Bug really shows you the difference. My friend Todd had a stock VW, same year. When you put them side by side, you see what's going on.
Same exact car, you know. Only difference is
Ian's touch. Eh?
only difference is everything.
Mark and Vivian came down to pick up the blue Bug. Mark is claiming that it's his. Vivian's now talking about she wants a Bug. She wants a pink Bug to rival Mark's. I told her that I was chopping a new one, and she's all about it. So it looks like I might be building her a car now. This thing is snowballed into something ridiculous. They're picking up a car from me, they brought a car down from Canada, and now Vivian's talking about wanting a pink Bug to rival Mark's. All I know is I got a lot of cars to build.
Right now on Full Custom Garage, Master Metalman Ian Roussel built a chopper-inspired trike from the ground up.
The whole concept with this bike is giant rear tires, long extended forks, total 60s, 70s Ed Roth style trike. Outlaw stuff.
With his hand on the throttle, Ian's not slowing down.
It's all about making this thing look badass. You see a lot of trikes out there, and it seems like it's the look that they miss on. I really want to make this thing shine.
And later, Ian's wild ride hits the brakes.
Like most things, best laid plans never seem to come to fruition that easy. We're in Ventura, California. It's the Chopper Fest. Just looking around, see what's happening. I got a couple ideas of a bike I want to build, and I'm just seeing what's out there. Seems like the bike world's taken a couple turns in what's popular with style. For me, the 60s, 70s, the chopper thing that was going on is really the core of it. Traditional bikes have a really lean profile, and of course they got stretched out just to be crazier. That's what I'm into. I want to build a bike that reflects that. The thing I like about these bikes is it's all fashion. They probably don't ride that good, but damn, they look bitchin'. The forks are all stretched out, no suspension, rigid frames, really stretched out forks, just crazy ideas on wheels. A big part of the chopper scene were these straight four engines, Hondas, Suzuki's. Denver's Choppers was building frames for these kind of engines, and I just think it's cool. I want to take that element of a really long bike, but make it a three-wheeler. Trike conversions have always been popular for motorcycles. It's really hard to get style into this three-wheel design, and I'm just gonna push my skills and try to make it happen. The whole thing I'm gonna try to do is build a trike that's badass. The problem I'm having with all the trikes I see is it just looks like a pile of stuff. It wasn't forethought. It just looks like they took a motorcycle front and stuck a car on the back. And I'm just trying to move through that. I want it to look like a motorcycle. My whole gig with the swap meet shopping is really just looking for anything cool. I'm not dead set in what I want to build, so I just might find the thing that sets the tone. Looking around at this swap meet, I'm thinking handlebars, seats, gas tank. If I can find some existing stuff from the 60s, it's gonna make my job a lot easier. I'd rather not have to make everything. If I can find it at the swap meet, then it's just way more progress. I'm walking away from here with a lot of cool ideas. I still haven't found the right parts yet. Chopper Fest is a great show. I got a bunch of cool ideas. After seeing a few trikes out there, I think there's room for improvement. I have an engine from a '79 Honda Goldwing. It's a motorcycle motor and transmission. I want to mate it to a car rear end. My friend Don, he's got all kinds of cars and trucks. The last time I was over there, I remember seeing a rear end from an El Camino. I think they'll be perfect for this trike. Yeah, this would be perfect. I'll just clean this up and bring it home. Trying to get this trike built in 2 weeks. There's a big bike show coming up. I want to bring this thing there. 2 weeks for this project is really fast. I've been thinking it through in my head. I got a lot of plans. I think it can happen. Good as new. The whole concept with this bike is giant rear tires, long extended forks, crazy paint job. Total 60s, 70s Ed Roth style trike. Like crazy cartoon character just jamming down the highway, outlaw stuff. Trying to use parts that already exist, it's easy in some ways, but in other ways it's more difficult. They weren't designed to work together, but you know, they do work on their own. For me, the process is having an initial idea and then just building most of it just kind of on the fly. So finding something that exists and modifying other pieces to work around that idea is the quickest way to do it for me. I need to take this whole axle apart so I can narrow it. It's got offset differential. I really want to make the thing as narrow as possible, so I'm going to have to shorten the axles individually. I want the tires real close, right up next to you where you're sitting. The coolest thing about the motor and rear axle on this is it's a motorcycle engine coupled with a car rear end. That's cool. The issue I'm facing is that the output shaft of the transmission is about 4 inches off center. I guess what I'm gonna have to do is narrow one side of the rear axle more than the other. I think the easiest way for me to figure this out is just mock it up with the tires and just see how narrow I can get it. This is the real deal. OG 1970s Krager SS. It just fits the whole 70s thing I'm doing. You can see how wide this thing is. It's just, I want something very compact. The thing I have to figure out at this point is I have my direct center where the 2 axles at this point meet dead center. This differential is gonna move over about 4 1/4 inches. So I think what I'm gonna do is make this axle 6 inches narrower than this one. Through all my calculations, it says that that is correct. I think something like this. That's considerably narrower. So you see the reason now, it's pretty apparent why I put these little legs on here, because they're all still at the same height. I can just move it, re-weld it. The axle housing looks perfect. It's got different length axles, it's offset a bit. I think it's gonna work. I narrowed the housing to what I needed. This bike has an offset differential, so I just ordered a couple axles that were machined to fit. So you can see, considerably shorter than the originals. This is the test fit. Hopefully it's good. actually fits. Number 2. Well, I'll be. It actually works. Wow, I mean, it works. It totally works. I'm always hesitant to let stuff leave the shop, but the machine shop did it perfect. It looks great. It's gonna roll. This rear U-joint matches the rear axle, so that's a GM part. And I just happened to have this old U-joint from a 49 Ford laying around. So I welded them together so that it's like a miniature drive shaft. The thing about the U-joints is the only way I'm really gonna know if it works is after it's done. The shakedown run, that's what's gonna tell the tale. The way that I've been building things, it's really found objects. It's used parts, old stuff, things that really have no purpose being together. I could just buy a motor and transmission and rear axle from a supplier. They sell trike kits all day long. For me, the turn on is trying to get this thing together with all these unique parts that don't go together. I'm gonna go visit my friend Gary. He's an old school biker. I know he's got what I need.
I've been in this building here for 36 years, and he mentioned something about what he was doing and on a bike, and I said, wait a minute, I think I have something buried here that you could possibly use.
Long time no see, sir. Best thing about having friends like Gary is he's been around forever. He was doing the thing when this was popular, so I know he's got what I need. Coming to steal the forks I've been hounding you for 10 years.
Oh,
Yeah.
I spy. Here they are.
Aha!
Yeah, I was going to do a project with them, and I never got around to it. And no sense of letting them just die.
Right on. They're definitely old and used, but they got good grease in them. These are perfect, man.
I've reached a point in age where, you know, I got to start cleaning some of this stuff out of here. You can collect only so much, and then you go, what are you ever going to use it? No. The Z-bars?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are a wall hanger.
Right. These are the real deal. These are old school. These parts are great. I just need one more thing. I looked right next to the ladder, and there it was. An Invader rim. That's an Invader rim, sir. What the heck? This is old school too, man.
That'd be perfect for that front end.
Tire looks like brand new. This is exactly the flavor that I was going for, man. You want the right stuff, you gotta go to the right people. Totally fits. It's exactly the combo.
I didn't even realize that.
It's perfect. The whole flavor of the thing is 1970s wild chopper stuff. So the forks are period correct, the handlebars are from that era, and I even got a front rim and tire. It's a good setup. It looks like it could have been back then. It's like a time machine. Well, it really helps, right? So I gotta polish all this stuff up, then assemble it. I mean, I'm not gonna re-chrome any of this stuff. It looks great. I'm just gonna clean it, steel wool it, polish it. I want it to look like it was from like a leftover, you know? Total survivor. I think these are perfect. I built this thing like 20 years ago. It usually sits in a corner, but sometimes I just ride it around, you know? It helps me think. It's really all the same thing. I mean, I'm just trying to get into some kind of a groove, get the feeling, and move forward. This is a creative project. There's no blueprints. The whole deal with the mock-up is that I could see it three-dimensionally. It's really hard for me to sketch something, but seeing it on the table, all laid out, I know what I'm looking at. The whole concept with the mock-up is being able to make changes. It's really hard to see what it's going to look like until all the pieces are in place. It allows me to adjust the wheelbase, move the handlebars, do my hair, you know, whatever it takes to make it right. Yeah, this is a little too low and stretched out. I'm definitely going to bring the tire in and the handlebars up. This is just the flavor I'm looking for. It's got that 70s chopper look. This thing totally came to life. I mean, it's still just sitting there on the table, but I'm already cruising on the highway. This bike has a solid rear end. It's a rigid, it has no rear suspension. I need a comfortable seat. I was looking around for seats, motorcycle seats, horse saddles, wheelbarrows, anything. That would almost work. To upholster the whole thing. No ordinary seat's gonna fly for this. It's gotta be something really cool. That's not the seat. It's hard to know what this seat's gonna be, but I want something unique. It could be anywhere. People sit on a lot of stuff. Seats are around here somewhere. Just gotta find them. You know, it just occurred to me, I've been sitting, working for 10 years, 8 hours a day on this freaking work seat. I think it's perfect. I want the seat to be right on the axle. As soon as I put it in place, I was like, wow, it's low back, really wide. It's perfect. I'm gonna put the seat right on the rear axle, so I'm gonna bend a hoop and set the seat. That way I can sit on the axle, put my hands on the bars, and decide where they should be. Using this 2-inch round tube for the seat support, I'm building the whole frame out of this. It's 1/8-inch wall, it's super strong. I'm just gonna twist it up and make my own frame. So I made these 2 little saddles out of a 3/4-inch square tube. They're gonna sit right on there, and that should be plenty secure. This is what I'm looking for, kind of low, kind of forward. That way with the rigid rear axle, you know, you're not leaning back and it's not beating up your back. It's gonna be a pretty rough ride. So like this, at least you got your own little internal spring working. Wind in my hair, bugs in my teeth. Here we go. I'm just working through getting this frame welded up. I really want to spend my time on the bodywork and the gas tank. You're not gonna see the frame at all. It's not a feature, it's just a structural element. It's got a rigid rear end. It has no suspension in the back. So the only thing that's gonna give is the headset, the Springer forks. There's no shocks, so it's gotta be a strong frame. I think I'm gonna set up the top tube in the frame so that the gas tank sits above it. Like you see the Frisco style choppers with the gas tank above the frame. I kinda wanna reflect on that. Most times you'll see like a straight backbone that comes through straight up into the headset. I put a little bend in it because I don't want a big like tunnel through the gas tank. I want to put as much fuel in here as possible. Because it's going to be a coffin tank, I was thinking it would just follow the line of this bend. You'd have a big open shape that held a lot of fuel. So this is the look I'm going for. I see the 2-inch tube backbone, 1.5-inch uprights, and then I'm putting a big gusset around through the headset. I'll weld it in all the way around so it's big, chunky gusset holding the headset in place. The whole idea of the trike, it goes back to when I was a kid. I mean, all the cool kids in the neighborhood, they had big wheels. Everything I build with these far out proportions, it all goes back to that. When I grow up, I'm gonna have the craziest freaking trike or the wildest hot rod ever. Coffin gas tank is iconic. Late 60s, 70s, chopper stuff. I want to build a coffin tank just like I saw in the magazines. So this is the start to the gas tank. Just laying out a couple quick measurements of what I want it to be. At this point, I'm just eyeballing it. You know, I'm putting out a center line, I'm setting up the top dimension of the tank, and I'm just gonna put it in the sheet metal brake and fold it, see how it looks. The main reason for using cardboard or hard paper is that you can create a 3-dimensional mock-up of what you're building. It's way cooler than some computer-generated image. That's pretty cool. That'll work. What I'm building is a take on this classic coffin tank, they call it. Has flat sides, kind of faceted, sort of like a diamond, or like a coffin. The coffin tanks are pretty basic because they're just flat panels bent on a sheet metal brake. It's pretty simple. No English wheel, no special hammers. You just bend flat panels and weld them together. See what the hem edge does? Makes a really rigid end to weld on. Just as an example, when they're welding together, you'll have two of these heavy edges folded over double. You can see how if I bend it, it's going to interfere with the next panel. So I got to clamp these to the table and fold them with a hammer. This is pretty cool because it shows that you don't really need all the fancy tools to do this type of thing. This is the last bend. This type of fabrication really reflects everything I've been doing, is just try to figure it out and make it happen. I've never had the luxury of so many fancy tools. Sometimes you just gotta go backwards, like this. A couple pieces of tube and a couple clamps. Done. This type of gas tank's kind of old school, no special forming, it's all flat panels. The key here is making sure it's all welded solid. If the welds aren't good, it's gonna leak. If it leaks, you're on fire. That's no good. I like to use the MIG welder to spot weld all the panels together. It's really quick to mock it up with the MIG. Later I can TIG weld it and then it'll be liquid tight. Looks good. Oh yes. Starting to look like a motorcycle. See, the idea is if you break down, you can just roll home. It's pretty easy. The next step is to create these little inner fender wells. Obviously, I don't want to be rubbing on those things. It's tight. Keep the pants off the tires. Just a little extra guard. I'm always open to using existing parts. Sometimes it brings you fresh ideas. Just thinking about what's around. My friend Bill's got a set of tractor fenders, and they might be perfect for this. I love the idea of a freestanding fender. There's nothing for these things to attach to, and it's exactly the way a tractor fender's set up. Now this is what I'm talking about. It's crazy because this tractor has almost the look of the little seating position that's gonna be in the trike. These fenders, I might just take these and modify them. It's exactly what I have on the trike. The seat right here, the tire's very close, and these do the same thing as I'm talking about. You see the rubber, and they just protect the rider from falling into the tire. That's it. Nobody's got fenders like that, baby. You're in your little chamber. Oh, you're definitely protected from the tires. But, they look absolutely ridiculous. These fenders are not gonna work. These fenders are a little too Flash Gordon for me. It just makes me think of a clown with a big tie on, you know, big shoes. It's just not cool. It's gonna look comical, and I'm not looking for that. My plan is to duplicate this design, but smaller, half size. I'm gonna use a round rod all the way around the perimeter, and then finish it off with a sheet on the surface. Here is an improvised arch maker. I need to create a radius around those tires. There's a lot of ways to bend tubing. Sometimes I just do it primitive. It works for me. Weld the end, flip her over, and roll out the barrel. This rim made the ring too small, so I'm just gonna stretch it out on this tire. It's always easier to open the arch up than to try to shrink it down. So the idea here is to get this to be about just a ½ inch or an inch off of the surface all the way around the tire, kind of like here. So all you do is just start to beat on it. Right about there. So this puts an even ½ inch perimeter all the way around. Now that I got these hoops around the tire, the rest of the skeleton of the body is going to be the same rod. So I'm just making some pieces that go around the tire and hold it up. Now I'm going to set up a couple little braces so that these hoops don't fall off the tire. Really, the only way you can create these shapes is by eye. You just put it in, give it a little twist, put it back on. So I'm going to create a little sheet metal edge that'll come from this side to this side and just put a little crown in it. This is why a man would want soft cardboard, for those very delicate areas. So my plan, cut the steel a little bit bigger. This is just a rough guide. I got some pretty cool air shears. Eastwood sent them over. They work perfect. This is one of those instances where you realize you can never have too many clamps. You can see it swings down and then out and then back around. And it's all one panel. It's gonna be a lot easier when it comes to bodywork because there's no welded seams. Some people may cut it on the highs and lows, but I just swung it right around. In the end, I'm gonna paint these fenders so they look like some kind of a carnival freak show. I want it to look like you're locked in on some kind of a wild ride. It's getting closer. The whole idea with the fenders, you can see now, your legs ain't gonna rub. It's perfect. You got just enough to keep you off of that. You still got your wheelchair action. It's pretty cool. Something about the bars that were on the forks, they just looked a little too small proportionally in relation to the rear tires especially. I just want the bars to be a little bit more forward and not so down in the wrists. I want them kind of straight out. I feel like with those giant back tires, the handlebars should be a little beefier. So I'm gonna make them out of this 1.5 inch round. See on the top of the bars how they come backwards towards the rider. I don't want that much angle. I want them to be a little bit more forward. I want a little bit of pullback, so I'm just gonna put this piece of bar stock under it. And I'll set up the angles like so. And that should be good. Just kind of winging it, whatever looks good. If they don't look good, I'll make another set. How's that sound? Right now, I'm just trying to make sure that they're both even. You don't want one limp arm, right? So I'm keeping these angles parallel, straight through, and then they're the same distance off the table. And that's all there is to it. Another issue with the forks that were on the bars was the risers. I thought they looked a little bit too spread out. I wanted something right down on the headset so that the springs really showed. These are the risers. They're gonna weld on the bottom of the handlebars. Instead of bolting on like those, it'll be a clean, clean look. See, I welded the little nut inside. Then there's the bottom plate. Makes it very, very strong. Feeling it, man. I'm feeling it. Born to be mild. The bike's really coming together. It's got the flavor. The handlebars were like the final touch with the fabrication. It's on. Now that the fabrication's done, I'm really starting to think about some crazy paint job ideas. But even that's getting ahead of myself. I need to make sure this motor runs. It's been sitting around for a while, and I hope it still works. This build's coming along great. The next big thing I gotta deal with is the engine. So I'm gonna try to adapt a Volkswagen carburetor to this Honda engine. I had this thing laying around. I just put a rebuild kit in it. Aside from my personal belief that everything should have a bit of Volkswagen in it, they're basically the same shape engines. A VW is a flat 4 boxer motor. The Honda Goldwing's the same thing. From the factory, the bike came with 4 independent carburetors with a big junction box that was the air cleaner. It was really well designed for maximum performance, but they're gone. In looking at the Volkswagen motors, they have a center carburetor with a long runner connecting both cylinder banks, and then they have a short splitter like on the dual port manifolds. It seems that they tried to make this as even and short as possible. So I'm gonna try to replicate that. Bought these U-bends, and of course they're not the right radius. They don't match from cylinder to cylinder. So the first step is to cut them so that they fit the existing intake from the Honda. The Honda motor and a Volkswagen motor, this style, are pretty similar. I don't see why this intake wouldn't work. Those 2 half circles you see coming out of the castings will get welded together, and then there'll be a port cut on the inside edge of each of them where the crossover tube mounts. Next, I'm gonna make a tube that crosses over the engine. After that, just make a riser for the carburetor and weld a base plate on. I'm using the same size tube and making a cross member that goes left to right on the engine. It'll look kind of like a dog bone, but I'll put it upright in the center of that holds the carburetor. It's gonna go 10,000 miles per hour. It's amazing. This intake is just a shot in the dark. It's my best guess, just like everything else I build. I'm just winging it. Found this cool little air cleaner. It's more just like a wire screen, but I modified the end of it so that it fits the VW carb. And now you understand why the frame has that strange shape in the front. See, that sits just like that. Pretty slick. So all I need to do now is just make a tube that goes up and holds the carb. Like most things, best laid plans never seem to come to fruition that easy. This isn't gonna work at all. I didn't take into consideration the way the throttle linkage is gonna hit the manifold. Pretty much married to the idea of the intake being this shape. I gotta come up with a way to make this work. I think I'm just gonna make a curved tube that sets the carb a little bit forward. I had intended it for it to be right on top of the intake, but it's gonna be a little bit offset. Yeah, the motor's rigid mounted. It's not gonna shake, so the carb won't hit the frame. It's all good. Bitchin'. I think it looks great. It's exactly what I was thinking. You always gotta jump hurdles to get there. In the end, it's what I wanted. Now that I got the intake squared away, I'm stoked. It looks like it's gonna go. I don't know if it's gonna work. It's time to try to start this thing. It's the moment of truth. All right, let's try to give it some fire. Every internal combustion engine is pretty much the same theory, so I knew somewhere it wasn't getting electricity where it needed it. No spark. There's this red wire just sitting here. I don't know if that goes to power. There's a little thing in here. It's no more ignition points. So this magnetic module needs power. That's what it is. Aha. So somebody changed out the points to this cool little electronic ignition. I had this whole motor rigged. The wires were twisted together. There was no fuel tank, no exhaust. I don't even know if there was oil in it. I just wanted to hear it go. Prepare for start. As soon as I put power to that red wire, like a light switch, it started right up. Next step is to get the tank and the fenders painted. Pull this motor back out, shine it all up, run the fuel lines, electricity, and ride it. This bike is bitchin'. I'm really stoked. I mean, it totally works. It feels good, it's got plenty of power. I couldn't have done it better myself. It's perfect. If you just want to have fun, enjoy something, goof off, this is the bike for you. The whole thing with this is to look like a giant toy. It looks like a big wheel. It's one thing to think about a project, but to see it right there, it's great. It's what I live for. My whole thing is just trying to push it, trying to push the boundaries. It's easy to make something that's already cool. I want to do something new. Paint's really kind of a loose interpretation of like a psychedelic 60s chopper kind of thing. You know, it's got the pearlies and the flakes and stuff. I just thought it fit. I mean, I think it works really good with the bike. You can't go wrong with an octopus gas cap, and that's like next level. It's a squeaky toy, it was a dog chew. It looked like a gas cap. The whole rear of the bike was really just something to take your eyes away from the radiator. It's a really simple setup. It's just a mesh screen, covers the radiator. There's 6 exhaust tips, 3 on each side, some cool, old school British taillights, and that's it, bodywork. It's a liquid cool bike, so I really just tried to make it look like a royal throne. That was the chopper vibe. Throne on wheels, and hey, there it is. I just finished the trike. I brought it out here to the Born Free show to reveal it, and it's on. Born Free show was the perfect venue to take this to. It's just mellow, good vibes, great show. I feel like this show really embodies that 60s, 70s hand-built bike vibe. You see a lot of really long bikes, thin tires, everything that was happening before the mass production.
I have a trike myself, a chopper trike Ironhead. And this one here is totally hand-built. It's one of a kind, totally unique. Whoever put this together knew what they wanted as opposed to anything else. I mean, you're not going to see 2 of them. And we're looking at the drive shaft on this, going to the rear end axle. Just it's totally unique.
I've always built Japanese bikes, and I noticed this had an old Goldwing motor in it. That's from the same era as the bikes I build, so I came over and took a look at it. I like all the angles, you know. I like a style of bike called a digger, and they had angled tanks like that, you know, like mid-70s sci-fi type of stuff, and I noticed that before I even realized it had the Japanese motor in it. Once I saw the Goldwing, that just topped it off. Didn't notice it until we stood here, but it's got a seat off a lawnmower on it, you know, and it's perfect. Nobody would ever guess, but I mean, he did the same thing, just home built different ideas, and it works perfectly.
The whole thing behind what I'm doing is it is meant to be displayed. It's meant to be exhibited, thrown out there for everybody.
It's pretty sick. You can make a Honda Goldwing look cool.
And a badass trike that's like super short. I don't think it's probably pops wheelies like no other.
A lot of ingenuity in it, very clean.
The reason I wanted to build this trike in the 70s style is because I guess the 70s style bike was a little more experimental, it's more creative, and I just like that aspect of it.
It's kind of like the weirder it is, the more it sticks out. So.
Yep, yeah, more people like it.
It's hard to describe exactly why I need to do this, and that really is the proper word. I need to do this. As I understand it, you only live once, and for whatever reason, I need to build these things. Being at a show like this, the Born Free, it really turns you on. No other way to put it. These guys have it nailed. It really makes me want to build something else. The next thing I build is really defined by what's laying in the scrap pile. That's how this thing was built.
Right now on Full Custom Garage, Master Metalman Ian Roussel transforms an old jalopy into a street-burning hot rod.
My friend Don has a real steel 1931 Ford. It's a 5-window coupe. That's a perfect starting point.
But Ian's unorthodox approach doesn't sit well with his traditional client.
There's times I sit and go, okay, Ian, what are you thinking about? Because he's picking up the strangest part to put on my car.
This is like work, you know? I'm at work here trying to make a really bitchin' car, but I gotta get back to my shop. There's something I've been looking to finish, and I gotta get to it.
Back at the lab, Ian attempts to resurrect a crazy creation.
This car is really kind of the opposite of what Don's is. His is for the street, this is for the show. All it does is get off the trailer, show up at the club, and do its dance.
And later at Don's, things start heating up.
I'd say a significant event occurred in my absence. Hot rods are a purely American thing. They started with early Fords mostly, 20s and 30s Fords. As I understand, GIs came home from World War II, they wanted to go fast. These were made from cheap cars that were just sitting around, just waiting to be hot rodded. The primary reason these cars were modified was to go fast. The looks just kind of followed the function. Chop top, for instance, was to streamline the car. These cars had big, tall, square roofs, so the chop top came about from hot rodding. The big draw to these cars is that they're just a blast to drive. They're lightweight, big horsepower. It's just a pretty gnarly experience. These cars are really desirable. They're making fiberglass reproductions, all steel reproductions, so to find an original surviving all-metal body, that's the best starting point.
Ian and I have been friends for a while. We've worked on several projects together. He gets excited coming over here to see all the projects that I have. I like things a little more simple, and Ian's way more creative.
This is like ideal hot rod material. It's a little bit too far gone if you needed to restore it. All the mechanical parts are junk, but for a hot rod, this body is really good.
Just as we started this project, I was injured, and I've been laid up for almost a year now. And this has been the best therapy, with Ian as motivated as he is, and me knowing I wanted to finish this project and get it going, the relationship on that worked out really good.
Don's wanted to bring this car back to life for years. It's literally, I don't know, 30 years, 40 years sitting around.
This car's been in the family for almost 50 years now. It needed to do something with it. It was just a cool car.
I love this car. It's really old. It's not rotten. It's been through some stuff. It's an old car. Got crunched in on the side. The frame is toast, but the body is totally usable.
It had been heavily damaged in an accident when it was in storage, and that kind of took the wind out of the sails on putting it back to original, and that's when we truly decided to go all out with it and build a new frame for it. I have a lot of ideas the way I want this car to come out, and Ian's creative mind, I'm sure he's got a lot more different ideas as well. So this is going to be interesting on this project.
There's a show coming up. I just want to go see what's around, get some inspiration, and start this new project. The Ventura Nationals has gone through a couple different transitions. It used to be called the Primer Nationals, but the primered cars have evolved into, like, you'll see, full custom blowout. This show is happening. Looking at other 31 Fords, this is like straight cool traditional custom. This is a lot like Don's in that it's a highboy. It's on the stock frame. It's running a Chevy V8 motor. It's just, you know, this is a really clean car. It's the way you would see it done in the 50s or 60s. And it's just a bitchin' look. The way they got the paint set up, it looks kind of old and patinaed. But this is a real hot rod. Good stuff. It's the same year. It's a 31 Ford. It's unchopped. It's a highboy. It's up on top of the frame. This one I consider even more traditional. It has the wishbones, but they haven't been split, so it sits taller. It's got a flathead V8 motor in it. It's totally legit hot rod. It's the real deal. The exhaust on this car is bitchin'. I really like it. It makes a mess, but it looks awesome. It seems like everything with hot rods has been done. I'm always trying to break new ground, but I see these traditional cars that are pretty mellow, and they're damn nice. Kinda on the fence. I know where I want to go, but sometimes you just gotta hold back. We really started this project about a year ago. I built a whole frame for it, and we haven't done anything since. I made a whole front clip look like a stock car. That's when the debate really started.
I wanted to lengthen it out about 8 inches just so we'd have more room in the cab of the car. I'm trying to build it as comfortable as I can.
The problem with extending the wheelbase is it's not that Model A hot rod that you see on the lakes in the 50s. Those cars were running a stock wheelbase most of the time, and that's the look.
But I was going for more of the practical look, had to make it comfortable.
Don really wanted room in the footwell, so we ended up making the chassis 6 inches longer. For the rear part of the frame, I used 2x3, 1/8 wall, and I used the Model A frame as a template where I put this little jog in it. And I just set that up and took the 2x6, just made a join and then plated them with a 1/4 inch plate on the outsides all the way around. We don't have a proper hot rod front axle, so I'm looking for something that looks like it. Don's got a 59 Ford truck in the back, and I think I can modify that to work. Since we need a front axle for the 31, I did this on another car, like a T-bucket I built. I used a truck axle. So it's cool because These straight axles, they have hydraulic brakes. They got the old school wide 5 bolt pattern. The cool thing about this axle is Don's already got it. It's here, it's got a great brake setup. A lot of guys would convert their cars to truck brakes, and really that's the main benefit. I'm just using the whole axle, but it's all about stopping. It's a no-brainer. I'm just gonna cut off the leaf spring mounts and create a new mount for the hot rod style spring. All right, so that's the deal. The main thing I'm gonna have to do before I start, see these pads where the old leaf springs used to mount? I'm gonna cut straight through and then weld a bracket on to hold the new radius rods. I'm cutting off the brackets that held the parallel leaf springs. That's the way the 59 truck was set up, but I want a transverse leaf spring. I'm making new mounts to hold this new style spring. It's pretty straight ahead, it's just gotta be really strong. I'm making a setup so that it holds the radius rods and the spring, so it's really just a bunch of 1/4-inch plate. It's basically just a big steel gusset structure that locates the axle. That's all. That's what I do, man. Just using what's available. Anybody can get in the catalog and pick a number, but I'm making it. This axle's done. I painted it black. It's a very simple thing. Just a bunch of bolts at this point, and it's ready to roll. Don ordered the radius rods from the catalog.
I don't have a problem with ordering from the catalog. I'm trying to make his job a little bit easier.
Don had the rear end he wants to use, so I put on some brackets, hooked up the 4-link kit. Now we got a rolling chassis. Found this Chevy truck steering box, mounted it to the frame. It's gonna work great. The challenge is mating it up to the forward front axle. They're different ends on the drag link. With every car I've made like this, I've had to make a custom length drag link. So when you put the end on, you just use the Chevy on one side and the Ford on the other.
With all the stuff that I have around here, Ian really has never asked me to go buy anything for a project.
I really like using stuff that's around. There's sometimes you can't get away from ordering parts, bushings, heim joints, that type of thing. But I really just like to find stuff and modify it to fit what we're doing. I think that's the whole thing about being a fabricator. Instead of a restoration-minded person, I'm looking for stuff that I can use, cut it apart, and make it happen. Somebody who's restoring a car is looking for the proper thing that bolts back on. Now that it rolls and steers, there's a few other mechanical things I gotta wrap up and then get on to the aesthetics. So the engine and transmission are basically out of a '67 Mustang. So we're using the same radiator. I built a simple angle iron frame to support it, and it's gonna get held on with 2 bolts to the frame like the stock one, and then it'll just have 2 locating rods to keep it upright that hit the cowl. This is pretty rad. It's a 32 Ford. It's a reproduction grill shell. All right, we're still waiting to figure out what we do about the insert, but that's pretty much the setup. The next step is to mount the headlights and then create some kind of a shock bracket. Typical setup on the Model A hot rod is the headlight mounts have an integral shock mount. It's another thing you could order from the catalog, but I'm trying to make this car Don's. Put as many unique things in it as you can, so I'm just gonna make them. Make them out of some 1/4-inch steel plate, and really, it's a no-brainer. The whole thing about this setup is strength. Those headlights are nice. You don't want them falling off. So the shock absorber is gonna be pushing and pulling on the headlight mount. It's gotta look cool, it's gotta be super strong. You can't mess with these headlights. Polished stainless steel with the cool little lights on top. Money, it's good stuff. This body is 80, 90, whatever years old. It's super old. We had to take it and do a bunch of work underneath. We got replacement wheel arches, a couple replacement quarters, and it's really just cut and weld. Body work, sand, sand, sand. We finally get the thing pretty dialed in. It's time to see how it looks as a roller. Don's got the treasure. He's He's got this Chevy truck steering box, but it ain't gonna work. The stock truck steering box is just one long rod. It's a straight shot from the steering wheel to the box. The Model A is way smaller, so we gotta bend it a bit. Took the steering shaft, cut it a few times, put in 2 universal joints and a couple mounts. There you have it. It's a bent steering rod, and it works perfect. The whole deal is getting the steering wheel in a comfortable position to drive. The steering box is pretty far off from where it would have been in the stock location. Car's lower, so we had to modify the steering shaft. Getting the steering column together was pretty important. You can research or think about anything as much as you want, but the proof is in the test, and it works great. Once I saw the body on the chassis, all I could think was chop top. But Don's hesitant.
This car is an all original, it's an all steel car. I would like to keep it looking as much like an original car as I can. That's why I'm really dragging my feet on chopping the top on this one.
In the end, Don's looking for a comfortable driving car, so no chop top. I'm just trying to help Don build his car. Every Model A has a hole in the roof. You can't get around it. One of the cool factors is it really gives you an opportunity to kind of make your mark. I've been looking around all over, trying to figure out what's gonna be cool. Don's got a bunch of van roofs, he's got car hoods, car trunks, all kinds of stuff. Looking around, I come up on this Mustang hood, and it's pretty thrashed. This is a '69 Mustang hood. The car got wrecked. I cut it out about the same size as the roof opening in the Model A. It's got a neat crease down the center, and it's worthless as a replacement hood. So we were talking about using it to fill the hole in the roof. The contour fits. And it's got this cool little detail in the roof. The selling point to me was the ridge in the hood. The ridge in the hood immediately made me think of a 50s trick where they would put these little air vents in the roof of the car. So that's really what I was hoping to do. I mean, I already had this thing built in my head.
I'm not really sure about the scoop Ian's talking about on the back. I'm, more leaning towards a original stock car. But as creative as Ian is, you have to step back. He's so creative. I mean, there's times I sit and go, okay, Ian, what are you thinking about? Because he's picking up the strangest part to pick up and put on my car. It amazes me that you never know where he's gonna go with something.
So I'll probably mellow out these 2 side ridges a little bit, and they'll just have a center peak right through the hood. It's like I can finally get creative on a very conservative build, which is like my release valve. Finally, I can do something inspiring. The whole deal with this roof insert is the car can buckle. This is a pretty structural point, so I'm having to clean out all the old crud. The whole deal is just grinding all the edges, getting it super clean so we can mate the sheet metal up, and it's a good, strong weld. Because if this car goes in a driveway or something, gets some torsional twists, the roof is gonna pop up. It's really important that this is strong, so we're setting it up so it's really strong. This is a huge sheet metal panel, and I don't want to warp it. There's a million ways to jig it up, but I found that tech screws, just screwing it down every few inches, works perfect. So that's the plan. Just screw it down. We'll come back and fill up the holes later with weld. Pretty much it. We'll just weld this on. It's going to take a long time to make all the tack welds. It's about 16 linear feet of welding, so stand by. It's all screwed together and there's no warps or kinks, so it's gonna be a slow welding process, round and round for hours. It takes so long to spot weld a big panel like this. I mean, your thoughts can go anywhere, but mostly for me, it's like the sound of a long, empty hallway with a slight breeze coming through it. It's just nothing. You can't think too much when you're doing this or you go crazy. It takes a long time. The satisfaction comes in the end result, because a lot of guys will want to work through it too fast, and I know what happens. I've been there. So really, I've trained myself to just slow down time. Just take your time and do it right. It's not that hard to weld this on correctly. The whole deal is not heating it up. And if you do heat it up, you got to know how to recover from it. and that's really where the hammer welding comes in. Each time the weld cools down, it shrinks a bit, so nothing's perfect. Some spot welds will be hotter than others, so if you find that it's starting to oil can on you, it gets out of shape, you gotta hammer it back before you do the next weld. It's really just keeping the metal under control. It's just a slow process. You gotta do it right. Once the welding's all done, you just grind it out. It's the same deal that you don't want to heat it up because you can warp it when you're grinding it. So you gotta know where you're going. Just take your time and get it right. When I'm grinding it, I'm just making sure I don't heat it up. I try to keep the edge of the disc on the weld. Never hit the sheet metal. It's really just, you gotta pay attention. Last part of the equation is the Bondo. Mix it up, fill it, go on to primer. The whole purpose of the Bondo is to level the surface. So you mix it up, spread it, cut it back real fast. Get as much of the material off as possible because you want the paint to be as close to the metal as possible. The whole idea with Bondo is using as little as possible. So I like to work fast. I found that I can use this big old saw blade and it's like 10 grit sandpaper. So if you use it right, it goes really quick. You just sling off the high spots real fast, just go to 36 grit after that. Don's car is bitchin' and all, but it's really not the creative entity that I am looking for. It's like, this is like work, you know? I'm at work here. I'm trying to make a really bitchin' car, but I gotta get back to my shop. There's something I've been looking to finish, and I gotta get to it. Working on Don's hot rod has got me thinking about this car I built about 5 years ago. It's a total show car. It just had some suspension issues, and it's really making me want to bring it back. I took the whole car apart to freshen it up. And what I'm gonna really do is make the suspension work. There's a few really cool ideas, but without the final touches, it's pretty much unusable. This is the freaking mess. It's a pretty nonsensical car. This is the bare frame. The motor and transmission are in it because it's so high fashion, it requires a ton of disassembly to get the engine out. So today, I just gotta come up with a plan. When I originally built the car, I had taken 2 airbags and stacked one on top of the other so they would blow up like an accordion. They were huge. So the airbags, you can see what I did. I just hogged out the threads on this so they just located. So they would fit together like that, a double stack. But the problem was with the arc of the suspension, they would literally turn into a noodle. And if the axle twisted, then they would come apart. They would pop out of the car. So this bag would be here, and then it would just literally break free. The worst thing was that the car could barely even get on the trailer. Even as a trailer queen, it couldn't do that one simple task. The cool factor is it looks like a toy. It looks fake. It was a super simple design. The 2-link is okay, but it needs a third. It needs something to stop it from going left to right. The whole deal with this modification is I do have to put in suspension components and basically busy up the design a little. I'm trying to make it look as cool as it did in the beginning, but without these extra parts, it just doesn't work. My challenge is to make it look as cool as possible and still drive. What I had established, obviously you got plenty of up and down movement, you got articulation in the axle, but I need to stop it from going side to side. So the fix is a 3rd link, some kind of a rod with a joint that as the suspension moves up and down, it swings with it, but it stops it from moving side to side. That's the fix. I might put shocks just inside here. This is all hidden. Might come off with shocks on each side like that. That way it'll give it a little help when it articulates and rises and falls. This is still a show car. It doesn't need to drive across town. It's got no VIN numbers. It's got no license plates. It's not an off-road vehicle. It just needs to get on the trailer. I need to get it out of the storage and back to the show. Goal today is to get this thing to have shocks and a 3rd link in the suspension. I was able to get a couple shocks, Volkswagen front shocks from an early, like 60s bug. I figured they're gas charged, so this isn't a performance car. These were around, and I'm gonna make them fit, even if they wouldn't otherwise. Went digging around in my friend Don's back lot. I was able to come up with an old tie rod from a car. I always like to put a little Volkswagen in every project. I'm using VW front shocks. and I found this tie rod at Don's. I'm going to make into a third link for the suspension. I just cut one end off. I have to cut it to length, but I think this will work perfect for the cross link. I'll have to come up with a couple mounts and mount this crossways in here so that as the suspension travels up and down, it won't go side to side. The first step today is to create an upper shock mount. I'm really trying to make this thing look like it belongs on the car and not an afterthought. So it's got to be strong and it's got to look as cool as the rest of the vehicle. I've really been tossing around a few ideas on how to build this thing. What I really know is that I don't want to grind on the frame. I don't want to disturb the paintwork that's there. So I'm trying to come up with a creative idea that'll bolt on. What this needs to do for functionality is locate the upper bushing on the shocks. I got a whole bunch of this, it looks like 1x3 or so rectangular tube. So if that sits on here, then once the shock is collapsed, it comes out to just about the right measurement. So if I set that up like that with a bolt going through, that should work perfect. They're gas charged, they gotta be really secure. It's got to be a strong part and it's got to look cool. I'm trying to make this thing look like it belongs on the car, and I've got drilled holes all over the thing. Some are dimpled, some are all the way through, so probably going to come up with some kind of a thing that matches parts of the suspension. I just cut an 11-inch piece of that 1x3 rectangular stock, drilled a bunch of holes. It took a while. I left the ends without holes because I'm going to put 2 small pieces of tube so I can put a bolt through it. I used a TIG welder to fit the bushings on the end of this rectangular bar. I did that primarily so it's a really neat weld, simple, minimal, there's no finish work, it just looks cool. The whole concept with this, from the beginning, was to make it look like it wouldn't work. So I'm still trying to keep all these functioning parts kind of minimalistic standpoint. When you look at the car, I don't want you to see a bunch of accessories bolted on. I'm trying to keep it low key. All right. So that worked out good. But the shocks, I think I'm gonna trim these shocks a little bit because that looks too stock. So this whole upper shock looks pretty bulky. And you don't really need this. This is just like a shield for a street car. You'll see what the deal is. I'll just cut this whole top off and it'll look pretty clean. The whole idea is this being a show car, I want you to look at the flashy stuff. This isn't a focal point, this is purely function. Taking these upper shrouds off of the shock just because it makes them look a little lighter, a little cooler. You got a nice shiny chrome rod coming out of it. Just looks cooler. They put these shrouds on it for cars on the street, keeps water, rocks, any kind of crud out of the moving part. But this doesn't have that. This car's never gonna be in the rain or in the mud, so no crud's gonna go down into the shock absorber. So it was primarily for looks. It looks bitchin'. The primary difference in the setup between Don's and my car is I'm using an airbag system. They both have a center mount, but his leaf spring is the thing that locates the axle and keeps it centered. My design for the airbag doesn't have anything to keep the axle centered, so I need to put this third link in. That'll keep it from self-destructing. The whole idea with this being on airbags is it's got to function. It's got to move up and down pretty quickly. It's got to look cool and be strong. Everything seems to be working, but you never know what could go wrong. I mean, this is a raw chassis. Everything seems to be operating, but I'll never know until I get the thing assembled, so we'll see. Spent a bunch of time getting some stuff done on my car, and that's cool. But really, I love to finish projects. Don's car is so close, it's good to get back here. I'm really looking forward to driving the thing.
It's great to have Ian back. While he was gone, I was finishing up on running the brake lines, the fuel lines, some of the electrical that's going into the car. And now that he's here, now we can get down to business on getting that thing closer to being fired up.
Mechanically, Don's got down on all the hoses, wires, brake lines, emergency brake cable. Everything mechanical is complete. Bolting in the drive shaft and modifying the rear forelink are the last two things, and mechanically, it's there. Cool factor times 10. We got some Coker tires, installed some radial white walls, 165s in the front, 235s in the back. It's got the classic big and little hot rod look. The diameter of the rear tires looks great. The frame has got the proportions I like. You gotta see it with the body on. That's what makes it all together. That's what makes it count. Well, the body's in good position. I gotta see what this thing looks like. Been waiting a long time. A lot of effort's gone into getting this far, so let's see what it looks like in the sunlight. I like it, sir.
I like it too.
It's so nice to finally see this car going someplace. It's been sitting for 40 some odd years. Now to see it getting so close, I'm so excited about getting that car running and getting it down the road. It is absolutely bitchin'. I couldn't have asked for a better car.
You've seen this car kind of mocked up 100 times already, but with the tires and the paint, this thing is ready. It's looking good. The last bit of fabrication is the exhaust dumps. Don's got a bitchin' set of headers, and they need mufflers. We're bolting on the headers, and I'm gonna fabricate the rest of the exhaust. Don got these old school glass packs, and he wants to run them underneath the doors along the frame like that. Took a whole bunch of cut and welds, but it actually gave it a better shape in the end. I trimmed it back until it has this like flowing rearward, kind of a mellow curvature. It looks good. That's pretty much the layout. I'm gonna take it off and finish weld it, sand it up nice. Don's gonna paint the whole assembly black. So the last bit is just to put a gasket on here. I'm not gonna put it together finally until we're really done, but this is the gist of it. So you got it and it's shut off. It flows out through the mufflers. So it's a 2.5 outlet to a 2-inch end pipe and muffler. But if he goes out to the salt flats or just wants to annoy his neighbors, he can open it up. It'd be like a marching band coming down the street. Without mufflers, this car will be pretty rowdy. You know, everybody would know who's coming through town. Don's looking to be a little more discreet. He's a little more mature than I am.
We're ready to install this. An aftermarket air cleaner that looks just fantastic.
Usually wiring a car for me is kind of tedious, but I'm gonna try out this wiring harness kit. It looks like it's all there. It's painless, so they say. And all the wires are labeled. Pretty slick. Cool factor number 2, we got a wiring kit from Painless. It's a big hassle to come up and build your own wiring harness from a bare fuse block. So we got this kit and it has everything. The crazy thing about wiring harnesses is there's always a million wires. And this one is color coded. Each wire is labeled. It's like a tiny little silk screen machine. I don't know how they do it. Every wire tells you what it goes to. So although it looks like a crazy bundle, they're all telling you what to do with them. It's really a time saver. And it's pro, you know it works. They got a great reputation. We're there. All we gotta do is button up a few things, start it, and run it. We're in the closing stages of this car. Don's project is just wrapping up. Today's the day we start it. It's all assembled, pretty much just up to the accessories and then the start.
Today's the day. It's all coming together. We're finally gonna fire this thing up and put it on the road. I am so excited about this.
Gotta put the taillights on, the deck lid, gotta put the seat in, and the steering column. Pretty minor nuts and bolts. The only thing left to figure out is this third brake light.
When Ian was gone, I went ahead and I got some LED lights.
In my absence, the hood scoop, this great styling element, has become a third brake light. Very interesting.
I like the practicality of the safety part of it because the car sits fairly low, that I think that's gonna work out really good.
He wired some wires up through the body, and he put these LEDs inside. In the end, it's all about craftsmanship. You know, that is a very custom third brake light. Our plan is to take an old taillight from a car and just cut that shape out. We talked about it. Don wanted a third brake light, and I said, there's no way you're putting one in the back window. So hiding it in the hood scoop was a better choice. The first step was to cut out the shape from the whole lens. We only need a small piece of red plastic, basically. Just creeped up on it. First I cut it with like a heavy cutting disc, and then I used a sander to just creep up on the final shape. I put a little bevel in it as it meets the body. It'll be like a 45-degree angle, so it'll sit right up against the flange that is in the body. We'll just glue in the seam with a little bit of silicone and just call that done.
Oh, look at that. Boy, somebody will see me for miles away. Perfect. Another wonderful job by FM Ian.
The final step of the whole freaking build. We're there. Don's gonna set up some tool to raise the oil pressure. The motor's been sitting for years, so Don needs to bring up the oil pressure and then rotate the engine a few times and get everything lubricated. I'm pretty stoked. Don turned the key and the thing popped right off. It fired right away. The compression and everything in the motor seems cool. It's firing fine, but it's not delivering fuel. I'm not sure what the deal is. It's pulling the fuel up out of the tank, but it's like sort of just pulsing. It's not really delivering the gas the way it should. For some reason, the gas isn't getting to the engine. Don's gonna set up something with a fuel pump or whatever, but I gotta take off. I gotta pick up a car and deliver it to another client. So I'm gonna come back in about an hour. Should wrap this up and we're gonna run this thing. We're ready to rock. I'd say a significant event occurred in my absence. This fire could have got out of control. Apparently there was too much fuel pressure and the whole engine seems to have caught on fire.
Let's get outside.
What happened was the seat in the carburetor stuck open. So it was pushing all the fuel out of the carburetor, and I think there was a spark when I went to pull off the wire, and I think that's what ignited it.
It takes a lot to get me excited. I'm a pretty mellow dude, so you know, seeing a car that was freshly incinerated, it's pretty exciting. I can't say I was really disappointed because it's exciting, you know. I'm into that kind of stuff. It's a bummer. The car's filthy now, but pretty cool. Not everybody catches their brand new car on fire.
It's not going to run tonight. It will run. It will make it to the show. It's just going to take cleanup time now.
Yeah, well, nothing's burnt. It's just dirty.
No. It's very minor damage.
Well, apparently getting gas isn't the problem now. It seems to get plenty of fuel. So I think we solved that problem. I guess all we gotta do is wash it up and run it.
It's running, it's ready to go. We're going to the show. Well, I had to clean up the mess after the fire, and that was a little challenging, but we got all the powder off of the car. Have not fixed one burnt wire yet, but that'll get fixed later on. And adjusted the timing on it, and it's good to go.
I'm really happy with the way this whole build went because the car is easy to get in and out of. It's a nice car to drive. It handles well, it corners well, it stops well, and the wife can get in and out of it well. I'm just so tickled. I mean, I couldn't have asked for anything more, or a person of Ian's caliber to help me with my own personal project. Working with Ian, he has taught me that you can make things absolutely bitchin' with the simplest tools, the simple material, that you can take something and make the most awesome stuff with it. That I have learned from him. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, this is assembling it for the first time. Still kind of a mock-up. I don't know if it's actually gonna work, but I got a pretty good idea, so we'll see. This car is really kind of the opposite of what Don's is. His is for the street, this is for the show. It's high fashion. All it does is get off the trailer, show up at the club, and do its dance. It has no other purpose except to get attention. The hardest part about this is that this is a finished, pristine show car. It's not like a mock-up. So I'm really trying to be careful. I want to assemble it, polish it, and show it. I got my car put all back together. The front suspension works great. I got it on the trailer and it's off to the rodeo.
Really excited, fire's out, car runs, and we're here. Very happy. I've had a lot of good reaction. The family just loves it. They can't wait to go for rides in it.
Seeing Don happy with the car, excited to drive it, I mean, that's what it's all about. Working with people and getting that type of response makes it happen for me.
I guess what kind of engine? Like Pontiac, Oldsmobile?
Oldsmobile.
Okay.
48, yeah. Yeah.
How does it go?
It drives like a jalopy. It's
got some poop?
It's like an angry little go-kart.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Is that like about a 38 bone body?
It's a Chevy.
Oh, it's a Chevy?
Yeah, it's a 31 Chevy. See all the extra lines in the body? Yeah.
Well, what was it, a two-door sedan or
It was a four-door.
Oh, and you shortened it up?
Everything, yeah. Yeah, I shortened it a little.
Made it
the whole
channel, chopped it,
channeled it, sectioned it, and painted the mother pink.
Well, what a car. I've never seen nothing like that in my life, and I've been around for 77 years.
Right on.
That's cool.
To finally finish this monumental task and have people stoked on it is really rewarding. You know, I built the car for me, but the people like it.
Right now on Full Custom Garage, Master Metalman Ian Roussel takes on the wild world of dune buggies.
This buggy's the real deal. It's a 60s survivor. I got a couple ideas that are really gonna make this thing unique.
But Ian's client isn't so sure.
We're on a time frame. Her birthday's coming up soon.
Got plans for this thing. I think he's gonna be stoked, and I think it's gonna work out really good.
As the build progresses, Ian brings in some heavy artillery to help the cause.
What do you think, Inspector? I got a dune buggy and a forklift and a dream. What more do you need? My friend Don, his wife Patty's birthday is coming up. He wants to get her something really cool. Her family has a long history with dune buggies, so he's thinking about putting together one for her.
It's going to be a total surprise for her. Growing up, her dad had a Myers Manx when they first came out, And my wife had a lot of good memories with that dune buggy out at Pismo and some of the desert areas with that.
Don is a car fanatic. His wife is a little more conservative. She's always wondering what he's doing over here. He's got 6 million cars. I think that this dune buggy might seal the deal. It might win her over to our side.
It's just going to be epitome of driving around in something cool, you know, especially done by Ian, because he's so creative.
I recently went to this dune buggy show just to see what's going on in the scene, and it's happening. This type of car has been built for decades. It started out with simple tube frame and advanced into this fiberglass body. At the car show, you see all kinds, and people just dig them. The early dune buggies are super desirable. They're still around, but they're harder to get. What you're seeing a lot of is reproduction stuff with really high-tech performance goods. The cool factor in this type of car is that it's super unique. They're about having a good time, and everybody does it their own way. The Myers-Manx is kind of the standard. It has the reputation of being the coolest, most sought-after classic fiberglass buggy. Yeah, the fellow across the way said that this was the original, the real deal Manx. I guess this one sits on an original VW floor pan that's shortened. And just looking around it, you can see a lot of the parts are all VW Bug. Seeing all these dune buggies got me charged up. I'm ready to get this thing going. Don claims to have an old fiberglass buggy and a chassis back in one of his shops. He's got like 5 buildings, huge, all full of cars. He said just kind of look around. I guess there's a lot of stuff in here. He's not sure where it is. There's got to be 1 million cars here, and it's been sitting for decades. This car could be anywhere. Don's got stuff piled on top of stuff.
Ian wanders around the boneyard here looking at this and scratching his head all the time. And I asked him, what are you thinking about? He goes, the next project. So we have lots of stuff here to work with.
The whole game plan here is search and destroy. It's gonna be a lot of digging, fighting a lot of cobwebs, but if he says it's here, I bet it is. He's got a pretty good memory.
There's stuff that can be hot rods out there, they could be gassers, they could be lead sleds. There's a variety of cars that I have here.
There's just so much stuff here. Maybe I'm not gonna build the fiberglass buggy. He's got a bunch of tube frame rails. He's got some Jeeps. There's all kinds of stuff. If I don't find this buggy, it's definitely gonna be something in these buildings. Now this is slick. Oh man. This Sterling is kind of a funky car. It's probably why it's sitting back here in the shop. They have a look, but it's not the look I need. Everybody's got their taste in vehicles. You look at Don's collection, he's got Mustangs, muscle cars, bitchin' trucks. I pull out the junky old dune buggy from the back corner. This is what I'm looking for. Perfect. It's pretty freaking rough, but these bodies weigh like 150 pounds. This is perfect. He's got a chassis here. It looks like it's 68 or 70. It's all here. All the brakes are here, emergency brake, steering, suspension, transmission. This must have been somebody's buggy project that they never got to. This is perfect. This buggy's the real deal. It's a 60s survivor. I don't know where it came from. Don's wife, all growing up, her family vacations were dune buggies at the dunes. It could be her father's, mother's, brother's, cousin's, uncles. There was a lot of dune buggies going on in this family, and this thing's still here, untouched for decades.
That old dune buggy body was something that my father-in-law had dug up years ago out in the desert from a guy that his son had crashed it. So the front end has pretty much been busted off of it, the gel coat shot, and it is in really rough condition. It really needed to be cut up and thrown in the trash can. It was that bad.
It's like a Halloween costume. I love it. See, this is super light. This is perfect. Done. Let's drive it. The only thing I can see for me as a down point is the body is thrashed. It seems like the nose was either broken off or cut off. There's a really bad patch job across the whole front of the car. The car was segmented at some point in its life. Don was really skeptical at first. This car was literally discarded in the back of the shop. It was on its way to the trash bin.
This is probably the biggest piece of junk on the property. It really is, with no exaggeration.
It's a freaking dune buggy. They're harder and harder to find. This is great. It's an original, old school dune buggy. I got plans for this thing. I think he's gonna be stoked, and I think it's gonna work out really good. Probably gonna make a roll cage around the front windshield area. So it'll have like 2 hoops that come up, some kind of center bar. The big question mark in this is the rotten fiberglass body. It's kind of out of my league, but I know a guy who could do the thing. I really like to do everything myself, but I don't mind another guy getting itchy on my behalf. Fiberglass is a really terrible material to work with. It's one of the few exceptions I'll make. Smiley's work includes every material you can think of. Metal, plastic. I'm going to him because he's a fiberglass master, and that's what I need.
We do a lot of fiberglass work, mold making of all sorts, all shapes and sizes. We realize designs for designers. We build exhibits for museums and for galleries and for film and theater. Yeah, here you go. Hey, just in case you break your leg.
Perfect.
Hey, break a leg.
Wow, that's awesome.
But we focus a lot on the sculptural aspects of artworks.
I've seen this guy do all kinds of fiberglass work, creating from molds, just hand laying stuff. Cars really aren't his bag, but this is a fiberglass body, and I know this guy's a whiz.
Ian came in with a very specific problem that needed a very specific answer. Well, we glassed it all back together. Whoever glassed that beforehand had no idea what they were doing. His problem was his car. It was poorly refabricated, it was poorly altered, and it needed some retrofit. It's pretty straightforward fiberglass repair. However, it was pretty spectacular how big the screw-up was on the previous fabricators. Part.
It looked like they cut the whole nose off, right?
I think they cut the whole nose off and then glued it back together with some kind of combination of chicken wire and bubble gum.
Right.
We just basically cut out the old section and re-glassed everything the way it should have been. But I can show you if we flip it over, maybe that's a good place to start.
Yeah, because I remember it was barely hanging on there. That's why I wanted to attach it right.
So, it got really thick in some places, but I'll tell you why. So basically, this whole section had some kind of chicken wire in it, and it had no cloth whatsoever in it. The cloth is what obviously gives it strength, but it was just solid resin, which is basically like holding it together with a piece of like glass or something.
Well, when I picked it up, it was just chunking out those big plastic shapes, so I knew something was wrong. Yeah.
It's nice and strong.
Sure, that's what I was looking for.
So basically, there's an area about 6 inches wide all the way down that went across.
Walking in, looking at the car right away, I knew he nailed it. It sits level on the floor. It was all crooked before. The thing's got globs of fiberglass on it, which is what I needed. I need the thing strong and ready to go.
It should be straight now. It all sits on the floor now.
Yeah, because that was the thing too. The whole thing was really crooked.
It was put on like that.
It's like somebody had it set up on a freaking crate on one side and then glassed it together. I was really hoping that this thing might be sanded and actually a nice glossy paint job on it, but Smiley's super busy. What he did was what I asked him. He got the thing back in action. Structurally, it's there. I gotta take it, sand it down, Bondo it, and get it ready for paint. Well, that's the thing, man. I think I could do all the finished body work. It was just this structure that I was clueless. I wanted to be sure it was done right.
He works pretty much exactly like an artist in the studio works. He has an idea, and he musters the resources that he needs to make it happen. And he's got a number of projects going at the same time. But he works pretty much as if a painter would be working in the studio. He's got everything there. I don't think he really even works with assistants much. He certainly doesn't work on a kind of a manufacturing kind of capacity. He's definitely hand building everything with hand tools in a studio situation. It's not a factory. That's unique craftsmanship, that's unique artistry. And I mean, because he's designing stuff completely on his own, I would not put those in any other different category than like fine art. The fact it's got wheels and motors, that doesn't make any difference at all. I think he's making art. I don't think he'll admit it.
I brought the body back to Don's. I put it on the chassis, and I want him to check it out. I got a couple good ideas, and I think he'll go for it. This is the car that was all the way in the back there, and I think it's got potential. It looks rough, but it ain't that rough. What I'm gonna have to do is shorten the chassis. This is a stock bug floor pan. It was laying in the back there too, but you can see how the tires are out of place.
With the body sitting on the pan, the pan hasn't been shortened yet. It looks a little odd. It's still looking a little rough around the edges. But I have a lot of faith in Ian on this project. Well, this would be great. This would be a little go-around deal for the wife around the yard here.
It's a pretty unique body. That's why I picked it.
It's gonna be cool. To see this old girl come back to life is gonna be really, really something. Seeing it a rolling project now looks a lot better than seeing where it was before. And it's starting to come along. It's still rough, but there's hope at the end of the tunnel here.
Don's got a body and a chassis. I got a VW engine and a few other parts. I think this thing can come together quick. Right on, man. Well, I'm gonna wheel it out of here and get to it.
Okay.
After I left Don's, I gave this car a good coat of primer. It's pretty much ready for fabrication. I got it back here in my shop, and it's time to start the fun part. The stock VW Bug is 15 inches longer than this fiberglass body, so the first step is to cut this thing in half. For a lot of people, cutting a car in half would be a real trial. I've done this so many times, it's like a 2-hour process. I'm gonna cut this chassis in half, shorten to 15 inches, and get on with it. The whole mode of how I'm putting this thing together is to work through it as quickly as possible. I'm gonna get the structure in place and then put whatever linkages I need in later. Shortening this chassis isn't a big deal for me, but I'm really making it mine. It's finally, I'm doing some work on it. It's been just conceptual up to this point, so it's cool because I'm starting to make some decisions. Inside the VW pan, there's a whole bunch of stuff. You have cables that control the heater, you have a throttle cable, you have a clutch cable, you have emergency brake cables, you have a shifter rod, and a brake hose, the brake lines. When I put the engine in, I'm gonna put all these tubes back in the chassis, so I'm not even concerned with it at this point. Deal. You see, there's really nothing to it. It's pretty straight ahead. So I'm making all the cuts just a little bit short of where they should be. The idea being I'll slip this thing together and slowly make cuts until it fits within a 1/16 of an inch so I can weld it nice. I pushed the chassis back together, shortened the wheelbase. It looks great. I'm gonna weld it up and put the body on. It's the first time with the proper wheelbase. I knew that this body was built for a VW chassis, but this is a later model than the body was. These were for 60s Beetles that had a swing axle. This is probably a 1970 or so. So I really wanted to put the body on once the chassis was shortened and be sure it fit. I never knew if it would fit until now. All my calculations are correct. Put the body back on the chassis. It looks great. I'm stoked. Now it's down to just getting the dune buggy specific parts put together. I wasn't even looking for a dog. I don't even like dogs. This guy showed up next door, won my heart. Hellhound. You weren't relieved from your guard. It was a movie about some vampires back when I was a teenager, and the Hellhound, you know, was the most vicious beast ever. And the whole idea with having a shop dog is he's the guard. You leave, he's on duty. I don't know if it's gonna work out. Think you can have a snack and then just mosey on out on your own accord? It doesn't seem to be very ferocious. If I walk away, I come back, he's asleep, he's eating. It's not a very vicious animal. Thank you. Thank you. Ready to yelp. All right, so it just looks like it's missing a top. It won't have a top, but I'm gonna make a roll cage. The look of all the dune buggies is the roll cage. Some of them had a single hoop, that was really early stuff. I wanna make mine a little more updated. It'll be safer, so I'm still making it with that classic dune buggy look, just better and stronger. So I'm using this 1.5" round tube. It's a 1/8 wall. It's good for a roll cage like this. Full race would be 1 5/8", but 1.5" for a light car like this is perfect. Roll bars are pretty much standard. Race cars, off-road cars, you name it. Safety is the name of the game. The weight of this car and the strength of the tube is an ideal match. This thing can roll over, no problem. The whole idea with a roll cage is you just want room to live. You know, if something goes wrong, you want the passenger and the driver protected. The roll cage is the silhouette. It's the big part of the proportion of the car. I just want to make sure that it looks right. This hoop fits the car perfectly. It's definitely too tall. I designed it that way so I can adjust it. It's really just about making the second hoop and then putting the crossbars in. It's all about how I fit in the car. Don has got piles and piles of stuff. I found these 2 cool seats in one of his shops, and they fit the bill. When I'm setting up a car, sit in it, it's all about how I fit. If the seat fits me, it's gonna fit almost everybody. Yeah, that windshield height's perfect. So the back hoop will be just above my head, and I'll have 2 tubes going forward. So, same deal as this. I'm gonna make 1 more hoop, cut 4 bars to cross over the center and go back and attach it to the car body. You can see these bodies are made to have this exact style roll cage. See how it fits in perfect down the corner? It's like when they did the glass, they designed it to have a roll cage in there. So you see it fits right in. This is good for me. I mean, there's plenty of leg room. You know, by shortening the car, you think, oh, we're gonna make it unusable, but remember, this Bug was a 4-seater, as small as it is, so I'm actually sitting where the front seats should be, just a little bit further back. Everything looks good. I just need to make the cross members on the roll cage, and it's a done deal. So, worst case, this is the height. Should all hell break loose. Oh yeah, there's plenty of room. That's perfect. That's the height. The next step is to trim the lower sides of the windshield tubes and commit to this height. You can see the tube comes straight through, and I'll actually want to angle this windshield back a bit also. And that ain't happening because of the tire. So I'm gonna cut this off, and I'm gonna have to reattach with some kind of a different plate. I'm gonna leave these clamps on there. That fits better now. So it's really all about the rake on this windshield. See, pulling it back to there looks pretty good. The whole thing with this is usability. It's gonna put some structure back in it because this fiberglass is pretty beat up, but this design is really so you can get in and out really easy. You know, you got some monkey bars to hold on to. So that's the deal. You know, when you're going around the dunes and you need something to hold on to, you got it. And then to get out, you got a handle. And it looks cool. Ever since I started this project, I've been thinking about the engine. Searching around at Don's, as usual, he's got so much stuff. I find an electric motor for a forklift. Just in a pile of parts, you know, there's this electric motor, there's a bunch of switches, speed controllers, just electric stuff. Just got me thinking. I mean, an electric dune buggy, nobody's got that.
That thing has been around before I've been married, and I've been married 35 years, so that thing is from the 60s, so it's got to be 50 years old, and I don't even know if it works. I know nothing about it other than it's sitting out back.
I've wanted a dune buggy forever, so building this, I'm kind of living vicariously through Don's project. I built an electric car before, and it's just a cool idea. I'd really like to make this happen.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned, as old as this electric forklift is, if the parts will work. And then we're on a time frame. Her birthday's coming up soon, and I would love to have it ready for her birthday, for that big surprise.
A typical story for me is just a bunch of stuff that doesn't belong together. I got a dune buggy and a forklift and a dream. What more do you need? I think electric car is happening. Today I got all the stuff set up to make this thing motorized. Body's on, the chassis is ready. It's time to make this thing roll. Scabbed a bunch of parts off of an electric forklift. I got a 24-volt DC motor, some kind of a speed controller, a bunch of solenoids, and a bunch of cable. This is pretty much all the stuff it takes to make this car move. It's just a matter of getting it together. When I took this whole thing apart, I didn't think to test the motor because I was so excited that it was free. I just grabbed it and ran. So it turns out the motor was seized. It wouldn't spin at all. I hooked up a battery and it was completely locked up. It's really a bummer because I got this motor for free, expecting to just go forward and immediately hit a wall. I have to put power to it and see what it's gonna do. It's a pretty sad state. This motor sounds more like a siren or something. It's really grinding, it's whining. Electric motors are typically silent, and this one sounds like something terrible. It'll be the only dune buggy with a real, authentic engine sound. The crazy thing is this motor's operating. I put 6 volts and then 12 volts to it. It spins free. It's just making a weird noise. Full speed ahead with this program. I don't care what it sounds like as long as it works. This motor has to plug in to that shaft. This shaft is what spins the gearbox. That's basically what we gotta do is stick that thing onto that thing. The big challenge in this motor swap is the coupler. I'm having to create some kind of a cockamamie idea that mates this forklift motor to the Volkswagen transaxle. The coupler's gotta be strong and it's gotta be balanced. I found a shaft that matches the VW transaxle. I got a collar that matches that diameter shaft, and I'm gonna weld it together and run it. I just transferred these holes to this square frame. So this face goes up against the transaxle. Same bolt pattern as the Volkswagen engine, and they're centered so that the 2 drive shaft things are lined up. I put together some really hairy contraptions. This thing is pretty dialed in. It's loose, but it's gonna work. It seems like it's gonna work. That fits the Volkswagen transaxle. What do you think about that? It's gotta work. I'm going off the standard VW gearbox, so it has a neutral, which is perfect. I don't have to worry about the tires spinning. So it's kind of a safety mode. I'm just gonna hook up the motor and run it, see what happens with no stress on it. The big question mark is how does this thing spin? So being in neutral and running it 6 volt and then 12 volt, it's cool. It's not perfectly balanced, but it's damn good. The cool thing about this dog is the first couple days he was sketchy, but he's becoming shop dog. It seems like the dirtier he gets, the mellower he gets. So I'm just not gonna wash him. It's such a bummer. It seems like anything that can go wrong will. This electric motor spins the reverse of what a Volkswagen engine does. That means we have 4 reverse gears and 1 forward gear. It's in reverse now, which will make it go forward. It's something I need to figure out. Yeah, there it is. I'm not gonna get caught up in the fact that reverse is forward. Sometimes things go sideways for me. It's still gonna move. First gear is here, and then second gear and then with 4 batteries, you'll have 4 gears. Should go 1,000 miles an hour. This proves that it works. There's 3 things I gotta do. Mount the motor, put a steering wheel in, and add some kind of brakes. It's pretty straight up. I cut through one of the brake lines, so if I hook that up, the brake should work. I'll hook up the steering wheel, and it's ready to drive. What do you think, Inspector? Think it's all right? He's schooling you? Today is all about getting the car ready for a test drive. Bolting on the body, finalizing the steering column, bleeding the brakes, and just making sure it's ready for the road. I got 2 batteries in the passenger seat, a 6-volt and a 12-volt. What it's gonna do is give me the opportunity to choose a low gear and a high gear. I'm not that familiar with electricity, you know? I've heard rumors about hitting people with a stick if there's an electric issue, so I'm gonna put my welding glove on and just try to isolate myself from the circuit. I am literally stabbing the terminal with a big old cable, manually. Right-hand drive, ting. So we got a low gear, right? 6 volts. Then quick to 12. And we're off. You know, I really wasn't that nervous. I'm ready to go out at any time, you know. This dune buggy would be a great way to pass. I'm always ready for the worst, but I stuck the cable on the battery and it just worked. The wild thing is when there was no load on the motor, it was humming. It was making a terrible noise, but once there's the load on it, it smooths out. I think it's just gonna get better and better. This is like a breakthrough. It was all a huge question mark. I've been really stressed about it because the torque that electric motors make will rip stuff apart, and I just didn't want to break. So having this thing operate smoothly is a tremendous relief. It's kind of anticlimactic because it works. I mean, it would have been a really great thing if it blew up or flipped over, but it just cruises. This thing rocks out. It works great. I'm really happy with it. The motor, perfect. I think it's gonna last a long time. It would have blown up right away if it was messed up. It just needed to wear back in. Brakes work, steering works. It's dune buggy time. This test is a complete success. What I have to do is figure out a way to switch the voltage properly. I got a bunch of solenoids, I'm gonna try that out. So what it's gonna do is it'll be a mechanical switching mechanism, choosing the voltage instead of my hand. It's just safer. It's all about the wiring at this point. I gotta talk with my friend Todd. He knows a little bit more about circuits, etc. A bunch of electrical whiz that I have no concept about.
What I need to know is what you want as far as control.
I want as little control as possible with as much power as possible.
Simple.
Those are the parameters.
Perspectives. So that's where we use the big ones.
This was actually the whole control box from the electric forklift. What this box did was control a series of hydraulic motors, but we're repurposing everything to control one single motor instead of a series of smaller ones.
I want to take this relay, I want to take this relay, I want to take that relay, and I'm gonna write a schematic on it, and we'll just wire it and
whatever
check
fittings.
it for functionality. Yeah.
Todd had a pretty good idea on how to make a speed selector for this, so he just drew out a schematic and I followed his drawing.
Cool little project, definitely. I think I can make it happen.
While Todd's getting all the technical stuff out of the way, I know enough to get these wires straightened out. Every time a wire passes through the body, it has to have an insulator on it, so I'm just drilling a series of holes and fittings in the firewall. I gotta build a battery rack, set up a solenoid rack, and after that, it's just screwing wires together. I'm gonna show off all the electronics. Instead of seeing a gasoline engine, you're gonna see this whole Frankenstein contraption under the hood. I'm gonna put in some flashing lights, disco ball. It's gonna be awesome. This part of the process is the final step. As long as we get this speed controller mounted, it's onto the paintwork. Nothing in this build has been that big of a challenge except for the electronic components. That's the big task here in the whole project.
You making progress?
Yeah, I did exactly what you said on your sketch. I couldn't get 4 6-volt batteries, so I mixed it up. I got a golf cart battery, a truck battery, a boat battery, and a forklift battery. So it's kind of like Tetris in here, but it works.
Well, it looks like everything's hooked up properly. And then this is your switch circuit here?
I couldn't find a slide switch or a rotary. So you know, with the 6-volt, it was really just a bump to get it rolling.
Okay.
So it's push button, so it'll go. 6 will just get you rolling, and then that's cruising speed. The second gear is 12 volts. Third gear is 24 volts. And because I don't know if that 36 is gonna fly, I just put it on a momentary. If it seems like it's gonna work, we could just put a switch there. So let's see if it works.
Yeah, just run it. That is rad, man. I'm telling you what. I didn't think it'd go that quick. And he's still got 4 gears.
It's a little spooky when right out of the box it works, you know? Speed controllers operated fine. There's power, there's speed. We're ready to rock.
See that? It worked.
That is brilliant.
Dude!
Totally works.
Right on. Awesome.
Yeah. Now that this car is running, I looked at it driving around a little bit. It's kind of bland. The body's a cool shape, but it's just one big blank thing. No trim work, nothing. It's just a shape. I want to do some kind of graphic thing. It's got to be an exciting car. It's a fun car, so I got to come up with something cool. Graphics are really time-consuming. 3M gave us a whole ton of tape, so I'm going to use every bit of it. I'm going to tape off the whole body of this car and come up with a cool graphic job. I got a silver car, I want red stripes, so I'm going to tape it off everywhere so that the only part that gets the paint is where I want the red. The wild thing about this is I have so many lines going on, I'm not going to know what it looks like until it's painted. This is just an idea. The whole deal is it's got to be symmetrical, and it's a million pieces of tape on this, so they got to seam together flawlessly, because if the tape doesn't line up, the paint doesn't look right, doesn't look pro. I don't have a lot of experience with paint, so I really don't know what this is going to look like until it's finished. Really, once the clear coat is on, that's the finished result, and a painter that's done this knows where he's going. I'm just going. Eastwood gave us a whole urethane kit. It's got this red base coat. You just thin it out. It has no catalyst. It's super easy to use. You just mix it and spray it. Worked out really good. I didn't talk to Don about any graphics. He saw the car primered and loved it, so I hope when I show it to him, it flies. It's kind of dim where I was spraying it, so I rolled this car out in the sun to check it out, and it's pretty much the moment of truth. Did I make it? I started peeling it back, and the glitter was just popping. The sunlight was hitting that, it looked great. And then Dawn shows up.
I don't know, Ian. Red's not one of her favorite colors. Oh, but that glitter sure looks nice.
Even though red might not be her favorite color, come on. Every gal is a fiend for glitter.
She loved the glitter.
right? Look at that metal flake.
Oh, wow. That's
Old
really
school
starting
dune
to come
buggies.
alive now. That looks really cool.
When Don saw this thing in the sunlight, he was sold right there. He thought Patty, even though red wasn't her favorite color, he thinks she's gonna dig it. Not only do you have glittering lightning bolts, but you got a double red line there.
That looks really cool.
I'm stoked that the paintwork happened. That was a little touch and go, but it worked out perfect. So once this base coat sets up a little, I'll clear coat it, and then really it's just like put on the headlights, put in the interior, and she's ready to roll. I think 3 days is good.
Yeah, when he pulled the tape off and it was done, and the clear coat was the next step, I knew it was going to come alive then. It looks absolutely great. Wonderful, wonderful.
Be just in time for her birthday, man.
Be perfect.
Hope
Be a
she
great
likes it.
surprise. Oh, she's going to love it.
All right.
Okay, I'm going back to work.
I'll be here. This isn't a really technical paint job, but it's way further than where I was going originally. And that's the thing, once you get excited about something, just keep going with it. Finally got the car all dialed in. Road tested it for a while. Seats are in, carpet's laid. It's time to show it to her. Don and I are gonna reveal the dune buggy, and I really hope Patty likes it.
She knows we've been working on something. She doesn't know what we've been working on. So I think this is gonna be a total thrill for her. She's been around the dune buggy stuff all her life. Her dad used to take her out, cruise in the desert many, many, many times. And she's such a tomboy. This is gonna work out perfect for her.
Don't walk me into something.
And here is your birthday present.
Oh, I like the red. Wow, this is, oh, and you carpeted it. This is totally cool.
No gas, all electric.
Oh, wow.
You can hot rod this around all you want around the compound here.
That's so neat. And it has the hubs just like the race car.
Just like Dad's race car.
That's awesome. This is gonna be so much fun.
Hot damn, she loved it. She really, really loved it.
It's way cool. I like that it's sparkly, and I like the red. The pinstripes and everything on it is really cool, draws a lot of attention. It's way cool, I like it.
Yeah, we actually found this back in the shop way back at the end. It was buried under a bunch of stuff, and we restored the whole thing.
That is so cool.
The thing that Patty responded to most was all the reused parts. We're on the same wavelength in that she's not looking to spend a bunch of money. She doesn't want a super fancy car. So the fact that we used all the stuff that was around her family's compound really turned her on.
All of those parts are repurposed from something else. I mean, I don't think he spent hardly a dime on it except for maybe some headlights and a couple other things. I mean, we're into this thing for next to nothing.
So the whole deal is it drives just like a car with the brake and steering, but there's no gas pedal. You just have this switch. So if it's in neutral, the motor just turns on.
Really?
And that's it. That's all you do is on and off. And there's different speeds. So you don't have to shift. That's your shifter.
I think my favorite thing that Ian did with the car is going electric with it. I think that is just way cool. And it shows how talented he is.
I was kind of nervous because it's electric, so it's different. It's completely different. So I wanted to drive it, but I was also nervous about damaging it or doing something. But it's really cool to drive. It's a lot of fun. I love it!
The cool factor about this whole build was that Patty's family was into dune buggies. I mean, for years, like old school when the thing first happened. So to restore this original Survivor and give it back to her, it's like it came full circle.
As far back as I can remember, my dad, he always raced cars, and he always had dune buggies. We always went to Pismo, and he had a Myers-Manx, and it was a lot of fun. And just looking at this makes me remember how much fun I had with my dad and with my sisters. And I'm not a girly girl, I'm a total tomboy, so this is totally perfect.
Don was totally stoked. His big issue was this was a gift to Patty. He didn't want to end up in the doghouse, so me pulling this off for Don was really like an ace in the hole.
Yeah, Ian did such a wonderful job on that, and my wife is so happy. I don't think we could have got her a better birthday gift than this. It was absolutely fantastic.